And we're ready to go. Thank you.
Excellent. Thank you. It is 6:30, but I am still missing two counselors. They're missing one counselor. And I know he's coming. All right, it is 6:30, so I am going to start. I will expect that Councillor Jansen will jump on the call in a moment. Oh, there he is. Excellent. Thank you, Council. I appreciate everybody getting on time. I know we had a very short period of time in between or in camera to grab some food, so thank you. So I would like to call to order the City of Colwood Council meeting for Monday, April 26th at 6:30 p.m. I would like to also acknowledge that I'm presently sitting in the shared traditional lands of the Coast Salish people. And I am looking, I'm just moving through my agenda. There is no in-camera resolutions to be released this evening. Oh, I'm sorry, I forgot. I need to do a verbal roll call. So I will do another roll call. If councillors can please unmute and just let me know you're here when I see your name. Councillor Parkinson?
Present.
Thank you. Councillor Day?
Present.
Thank you. Councillor Baxter?
Present.
Councillor Logan?
Here.
Councillor Jansen?
I'm here, thanks.
Councillor Kobayashi?
I'm present.
Thank you. So we have no in-camera resolutions to release. So I'm moving to approval of the agenda. There is a change, Council, to the agenda. I would like to add item number 8.2, and this will just be a verbal update from Councillor Parkinson in regards to West Shore Park and Rec. I just, as a delegate or the appointment for West Shore Park and Rec, and with COVID, I thought it would be just nice to sort of hear what's going on. There will be no decisions, so I am just putting it under presentations. So with that one change, or that one addition, are there any objections to the near-term, long-term, and regular council meeting? Councillor Day, go ahead.
I did speak to staff earlier today and about the minutes, and the recommendation from staff was that we put those off till next council, the minutes under 6.1 of the regular council meeting, April 12th. There's just a couple of errors where it was too big to be able to fix in tonight.
Okay. Was that a recent conversation, Councillor Day? Because I had spoken to Ms. Wickens, and she thought we were going to proceed with minutes, but I will.
It was cleared today.
Okay. So Marcy, do you want to just comment?
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. We can definitely postpone them and take them off till next council meeting. That's fine.
And that's 6.1?
Yes, 6.1.
Okay, then so we'll remove 6.1 off of that. So with those two changes, are there any objections? Seeing none, I will say that motion is passed by unanimous consent. Moving on to public participation, we have received 5 written submissions. Sorry, I'm just reading our notes. My note says that we received 1 and then parenthesis 5. So I believe it was 5 written submissions that have been added to the agenda. We also have 5 people who have registered to speak this evening. And I do need to read this one blurb. Comments pertaining to matters that have been the subject of a public hearing are prohibited where the bylaw related to the matter has not been presented to council for consideration of adoption. The following items have been the subject of a public hearing. Bylaw number 1840, which is a retail cannabis for 310 Goldstream Road. Bylaw number 1700-04, Royal Beach Sub-Area Plan. And bylaw number 1837, CD30, Zone Royal Beach. And that is it. Since we have 5 people registered, we have a maximum of 20 minutes for public participation. So I am going to be limiting speakers to 4 minutes. I will be running a clock. So once you begin, I'll start the timer and then let you know when your 4 minutes is up. I do have a list of the 5 people, but staff, I will look to you to invite the first speaker. Or would you like me to do it, staff?
Sorry about that, Mr. Mayor. So yes, we can call the first speaker. That would be John Alexander. If you could please unmute yourself and address council, please.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor, members of council. My name is John Alexander. My address is 26 Bastion Square. I've been asked to speak on behalf of Jandy Groon and Janet Pretzel, the owners of a parcel of land at 446 Pelican Drive, in respect to the variance application for an adjacent property at 452 Pelican Drive. I did send a letter in April 22nd, 2021 that summarizes my client's position. My clients oppose the variance because of the imposition that an additional height will cause on their outlook and their privacy and their overlook of them and their neighbors. But primarily because it is my client's position that there's an existing restrictive covenant on the property that was filed in 2007. It comprises an agreement that was entered into between Royal Bay Development Ltd. And the city of Colwood, and it's a very strange document because it is a statutory building scheme masquerading as a restrictive covenant. And I say that because the substance of it reads like a statutory building scheme that requires building approval, but it's between the city and the original landowner and is designed and built as a covenant on the title. And the primary thing I want to bring your attention to is the provisions of section 5.1, where the city and the developer at the time agreed that the zoning regulations must be adhered to by the owner to ensure complete compliance with all development regulations. In my submission, this is no different than any other building scheme where, despite a zoning bylaw or the variance of a zoning bylaw, this is an additional layer of regulation or requirements. And it is very clear that the zoning regulations must be adhered to, which means you can't vary them, or even if you do vary them, the variance is not effective to allow the owner of the land to build in excess of the zoning regulations. Second thing I'll say is, looking at this today, there is a whole administration and approval process in this covenant that goes back to Royal Bay Development Limited and requires that company as the original developer to also approve all of the building designs. There's no indication that that has been done, and so there might be a bit of a cart before the horse here. And the last thing is, I did send to staff this morning a perspective that was done for the outlook over this property from my client's land and 5 of his adjacent neighbors, that show the difference between complying with the zoning bylaw at 8.5 meters and the variance that's being sought, which is a couple of meters higher than that. Hopefully that's something that staff will be able to share with you during your deliberations on the item when it comes up later in the agenda. Thank you.
Thank you very much. I will look to our next speaker.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. If Mrs. Boyd could please address council.
Hello? Hello?
Yes, we can hear you.
Oh my God, I'm so sorry. This is my first time reaching out. I've been a West Shore resident for 30 plus years. I've lived in Colwood for a couple of decades now. I'm on Mount View Avenue, just off Souk Road. So my reason for following up on something that I was pursuing is that I feel very passionate and very very concerned about what information I was given through the city, and so I'll just bring you a little bit of information. I was interested in finding out about on Ocean Boulevard in Colwood. I have a history of always going to the Squamouth Lagoon. I have past memories there, very many occasions. So because of circumstances that are in everybody's situation right now, I had hoped and wished to obtain one of those benches with a plaque, a memorial type commemoration. And when I was in touch with John Russell from the Parks Department, he sort of gave me some options where I could have any type of water views, was kind of like from up above Royal Bay, up behind the high school. That's kind of like so far off the deep end of where I was hoping to go. So I went to the lagoon on my own. I did some exploration. I was there checking the existing benches, checking the spaces between. I have a very, very, very strong desire to plead with someone on your end for reconsideration, because when I went back to John Russell, who is presently on holidays this week, his only reply to me was, I don't understand why it stopped, why it can't be given any type of refresh or conversation. He said it was voted by council. So I've gone to the council or I went to somebody else in your office to ask who can sort of give me the process or procedure that has to go when you want to be heard about any particular subject. So this was all happening last week. I didn't have time to write about it and find out who in your office, other than John Russell in the parks, who is on holidays this week. So I'm reaching out to you. I mean, I don't want to seem desperate, but I think in a way it feels like on the scale of maybe everything else that has to be covered or that everybody else is putting forward on the table, that my thing is, kind of like easy peasy, just give me an answer. I just still want someone to be able to walk me through this, sit down with me, or discuss it further, or open the opportunity.
So, Ms. Boyd, what I can say to you is, unfortunately, your 4 minutes has expired. But what I can say to you is that we do have staff on board. I have made, listening tonight. I know our CAO has made notes, and we will have the appropriate person reach out to you tomorrow, and we'll clarify the issues, and we will definitely work with you, and we will get to a resolution. And I will also ensure that staff pass on my information to you, so that you can also follow up with me.
Okay, so I'll wait for a phone call?
Yes, somebody will reach out to you tomorrow.
Okay, I appreciate it. Thank you for your time very, very much.
You're welcome.
Okay, good night.
Good night now. Oh, yeah, you can just hang up.
I just hang up. Okay, goodbye.
Yeah. Thank you. I didn't mean that rudely. You didn't. You could, but I will go to staff now to introduce the next person wishing to speak.
Okay, thank you. I appreciate it. Thank you.
Thank you, Boy.
Okay, bye-bye.
Thank you, Mayor Martin. I ask that Ms. Davis join us. Unmute, please.
Hello. Good evening, Mayor and Council. Laura Davis, 3324 Pivot Place, Colwood, President of the Arts and Culture Colwood Society. Our newly formed arts organization is underway, creating connections in Colwood with artists, artistic organizations, community organizations, local First Nations, developers, City Council, Heritage Commission, and staff. As an initial step, we are working on a survey to circulate through Colwood citizens, a very short survey, and setting some priorities for our organization for arts engagement. Working together with the stakeholders, as I've mentioned, and the public is important to our team in order to create arts programming that is valued by the community. We are currently an all-volunteer organization. Looking at long-term strategy, we do see a future of some employment opportunities. Having a local arts organization will assist in bringing programming that helps build community spirit. Being keenly aware of local initiatives will allow us to bring focus to arts programming that aligns with the city and the public to create healthy arts and cultural activities. Startup for the first year is extremely difficult, especially in the environment we're now in with COVID restrictions. Our board of directors now consists of 6 members, and we are currently recruiting volunteers. It takes about a year to gain access to many of the funding programs throughout the region and province. This is why our grant and aid request today is critical for us. It will allow us to create arts programming, demonstrating our value to the community. The provincial granting agencies need a track record in order to begin investing in our organization. Funding from our local municipality will allow us to leverage funding at the provincial level in less than 1 year. We do plan on doing some fundraising, and our fundraising will likely be tied to direct programming initiatives. We are engaged with Royal Bay neighborhood at this time for the creation of the Emily Carr interpretive sign at Painter Trail. This is scheduled for completion in early July of 2021. Our team and local visual artists are also ready to provide an outdoor show for the end of May 2021. A pop-up theater presentation is also envisioned for several neighborhoods midsummer. Recognition of COVID restrictions for safety will be strictly followed. As we proceed through the COVID dilemma, we find that arts and culture is a catalyst to bring hope and joy back to our neighborhoods. We feel strongly that our mental health is one of the highest priorities going forward. Arts and culture is a means to strengthen our attitudes and behaviors in a healthy way. Our team believes that having an arts organization such as ours will create a sense of pride and solidarity for the city of Colwood. Thank you very much for your consideration of our grant this evening, grant and aid application. Thank you.
Thank you very much. I will go to our next caller, staff.
Thank you, Mayor. Kat McMicken is next, please. Please unmute yourself.
Kat, if you are attempting to speak, we can't hear you presently. Oh, there you go.
Sorry about that. It's as if I'm doing this for the first time. Good evening, Mayor, Council, and staff. My name is Kat McMicken, and I'm a resident of Willett Street in Royal Bay. Firstly, I would like to thank you for giving me the opportunity to speak to you all this evening. I will make this short and sweet. The reason for my call this evening is actually an item on tonight's agenda, Royal Beach. And just to clarify, this is not pertaining to the Royal Beach bylaws. It is more of a curiosity rather than a question. Many have been wondering what is happening with Royal Beach, as for the last few months it has been fairly quiet. I myself wanted to know that we have not, wanted to let you all know that we have not forgotten about it. Questions are asked daily as to the status, and I am very much looking forward to seeing the development take flight and watch it grow into a spectacular place. hopefully we will see this happen soon. Thank you all, and I hope that you all have a wonderful evening.
Thank you. And we have one final caller.
Thank you, Mayor. I don't believe that Chantel Smith is here tonight, unfortunately.
Okay.
Oh, I am.
Oh,
here.
oh, she is.
I couldn't unmute on the phone, so then I called in by Zoom.
Okay, great. I will give it to you. You are welcome to have your 4 minutes.
Thank you.
So I live at 456 Pelican Drive, and so this is in reference to the variance application for the development next to us. And so we are the neighbors that are directly beside the development that they're applying for the variance on. And we're just wanting to, one, listen in, but also express our own concerns about the height restriction or the height variance, and how that would tower over top of our property and other properties in the area. That's all I just wanted to say, and just be aware of kind of what was happening at the council meeting. Thank you.
Thank you. And thank you. Excuse me. Thank you for participating. And I'm going to just confirm with staff one last time, there are no other last minute callers or anything else I can move on.
Thank you, Mayor. No further public participation.
Excellent. Thank you. Then I will move on to Mayor's message. Just two quick notes. First of all, very excited. Last Wednesday, the CRD Transportation Committee passed a motion to support and ask the province to fund a full feasibility study of the West Shore Ferry. And that will go to the full board on May 12th. And I hope that that motion will pass at that level. And then it will, at that point, be directed towards the province, and then hopefully discussions with the province towards moving forward with the feasibility study. If you are looking to participate at all, I know there is a public citizen-driven website and Facebook group, so I would encourage you to look for that. I believe it is listed under West Shore Ferry. And then the only other thing that I just wish to share with council was just a nice thank you note. This was from the chair of IACTI, Marnie Essery, and I just wanted to read it to you. It was on behalf of the Inter-Municipal Advisory Committee on Disability Issues. I would like to thank the mayor and council for their outstanding support of our committee and its events and initiatives. The $1,100 will make a difference in promoting inclusiveness and accessible communities. Thank you for being such a valuable and appreciated community partner. So I just thought that was a very nice card, and I appreciate the sentiments. And that is all I have to share for this evening. So we are going to move on. 6.1, we have pushed to the next meeting. And so we do have the regular meeting, the regular meeting of council February 22nd, and there was amendment to the minutes. Are there any objections to 6.2? Seeing none, I will say that the motion has passed unanimously. Moving on to 7, correspondence requiring council directions. The first is from Lisa Helps, the mayor for the city of Victoria. And this is in regarding to support for laid off hotel and tourism industry workers. There is a recommendation in our agenda, but I will look for direction from council. Councillor Parkinson. Oh, excuse me. Excuse me. I meant Councillor Jansen.
That's about 50 years older than me, but thanks anyways. I will move the recommended motion, Your Worship. I think it's a worthy venture.
Excellent. Thank you. Can I get a seconder to that? Councillor Baxter, your hand's up. Are you comfortable with seconding it?
Absolutely.
Excellent. Thank you. I'm just going to lower hands. Is there any discussion? Seeing none, I will call the question. Those in opposition? Nobody opposes. Thank you. Moving on to 7.2. This is from the mayor of Penticton. And this is in regards to the BC government's use of provincial, paramountcy, I hope I pronounced that right, to undermine local government bylaws. And there is a recommendation in the agenda, Councillor Parkinson, or excuse me, Jansen. I'm not sure why I keep looking at Jansen and saying Parkinson.
Sorry, Your Worship, I'm just getting caught up here. I'm not going to move this motion. I'm going to oppose it, and I'll give a few brief words. This is about the location of a home or a shelter for difficult to house folks in Penticton. It's become a very political issue. I've followed the media reports on it, and the reason the province has taken these steps is because they can't come to a solution with the city council in Penticton to open a facility or keep a facility running in that area. And as a result, the provincial government has taken what some might feel is the appropriate action to move towards a housing solution for some of the homeless in that area. So I will leave the rest to my council peers. Thank you.
Excellent. What I will do then, thank you for the comments, Councillor Parkinson. Why am I saying that? I do not know why I'm saying. My apologies.
Hopefully he's flattered.
Yeah, well, I think he is. If I'm not seeing anyone who's interested in moving the recommendation, I will just we'll just receive this correspondence and move on to the next subject. So I will look for a hand to move the motion.
I'll make the motion to receive, I guess, because I started with my diatribe. Thank you, Your Worship.
All right, thank you. Well, I wasn't going to look for a motion to receive, but since I already got it, I'll just stick with it. And may I have a seconder then to receive it? Thank you, Councillor Parkinson. Any discussion? Seeing none. Sorry, I will lower hands. Those in opposition, please raise their hand to receive the correspondence. That motion passes. Moving on to 7.3. This is from Councillor Dean Jansen from the City of Colwood in regards to mental health and policing. Councillor Jansen, do you wish to speak to it first?
Well, maybe Councillor Parkinson would like to have a go at it.
I was about to ask that.
Happy to.
I'm only kidding. Thank you. This is a motion that I proposed. I will be brief because this has been batted around in media circles and on some emails. Our officers in the West Shore Detachment are spending an inordinate amount of time at the hospital for delivering persons apprehended under the Mental Health Act to a medical facility, which officers are required to do under the Mental Health Act. Unfortunately, the interpretation by VHA and the province is that those officers must then wait with someone who's been apprehended until they've been actually triaged. And we all know how triage works. So people who require more serious attention, jump to the head of the line. And in the end, you can have anywhere from 1, 2, 3, 4 sets of officers sitting in the waiting room with persons who have been apprehended under the Mental Health Act. And I do have some experience in this regard, and it is not acceptable. It is an impact on our policing resources where that officer is then out of commission, essentially. Could be up to 2 officers depending on the risk level or whether it's a 2-man vehicle. And they're all of a sudden not available to attend the 300 calls we had in Colwood in April. It's a concern, and it's something that we should oppose vehemently. And there is a motion there that comes forth from Councillor Stephen Andrew in Victoria that got the ball rolling on this. And I do believe that we should express our support. And I will move the recommended motion. I know it's mine, so it's kind of self-serving. But just to get the ball rolling. And I believe there's a number of something like 1,400 hours spent in 2020 at the hospital. So that's basically the amount of time an officer works in a year, just slightly less than that. So that's one officer we paid for the year to sit at the hospital. And health is a provincial responsibility. We've talked about keeping in our lanes. And I would ask that the provincial government keep in their lanes and fulfill their end of the bargain as well. Thank you, Your Worship.
Thank you. Councillor Logan, you are on my list as the next person. Are you comfortable with seconding that motion, and then I'll just go to you as the seconder? Or do you wish for me to look for a seconder, someone else?
No, I'm happy to second it, Your Worship, and I just have one small addition.
Sure.
If you'll hear me.
Yep.
In addition to the bullets that Councillor Jansen is proposing, I would just like to add that the province provide the appropriate funding to put such a program into place.
Great, thank you. Councillor Jansen, are you comfortable with that? With that being added? Yeah, great. Okay, thank you. Councillor Logan, did you wish to speak at all to it?
No, I think Councillor Jansen was quite articulate and eloquent, and I know it's a challenge even within the health system for which I work to provide the resources. So I am supportive, and I'll leave it at that.
Great, thank you. I have Councillor Kobayashi, then Councillor Day.
Thank you, Your Worship. Just a question for Councillor Jensen. Maybe you can help me out with this. Just a simple question here. Is this just moving the monkey? How does Island Health Security feel about this? Are they in agreement with this then, or are we just moving monkeys?
So that's a great question, and we're not just offloading. So what the ask is here by way of the City of Victoria is that we go back to the way it was. So way back when I started in this industry, a person who had been apprehended was quickly delivered to the hospital, and they were taken over or delivered to security staff that were then fully capable of doing whatever was necessary to maintain the safety and the health and welfare for that individual. But what it wasn't was a couple of police officers having to sit there. This has evolved over the last 2 decades, and it comes as a result of a court case that was publicized in the Times Colonist. And what happened was there was a reaction from VHA and the provincial government in their interpretation of the Mental Health Act. And ergo, it evolved to what it is today. It is nonsensical to pay a first-class police officer that we all know how much costs per year to sit and babysit somebody in that setting. Now, it is necessary and it's worthwhile, and it's for the wellness of the individual, so they all do their jobs. I'm arguing that this is not a job that should be undertaken by one of our general duty police officers that is meant to be out there providing security for 100, however many thousands we have in the West Shore now. We probably get close to 100, and instead they're stuck all the way across town because this is at the Royal Jubilee Hospital, and they're unavailable. So yes, it's anointing security staff to be able to deal with these situations. It would be a safe transfer from a sworn peace officer to security staff, who would then be responsible for the welfare of the individual while they're waiting to see a medical practitioner.
Oh, fair enough. That's it makes everything you said makes sense. I was just worried about how much pushback you're going to get on this, but okay, thank you.
Thank you. I have Councillor Day, then Parkinson.
Thank you. I just want to confirm that I am also very aware that this has taken a great deal of time. It's something we have tried to bring forward to AVICC and UBCM in the past. And it is a problem in many municipalities, not just ours. So I love the recommendation. I think this is a great start. But if we don't get the traction that we need, I think that is where we go next. Thank you.
Thank you. Councillor Parkinson.
Thank you, Your Worship. Hard not to be supportive of the intent of this motion, but I have to say I have some real concerns within the sort of, call it, policing industry. There's a whole gamut of skill levels and pay levels and ability levels, from the sort of minimum wage security guard who's got a uniform and no clout, all the way up to the highly trained police officers. So the concern about highly trained police officers sitting at the hospital is well founded, and I think Dean's given an estimate of 1 FTE is spent doing that. But if in fact what we're doing is turning all the security guards in the hospital into essentially police officers, to become a special constable has a meaning in a bunch of places that I couldn't define exactly what it means for the hospital. But it may well mean that we're asking the provincial government to essentially have much more highly skilled and trained people than they do today at some cost that might far exceed the cost of 1 FTE for a police thing. So while I can be supportive of the idea of let's rationalize it and do the best job we can, I can't, in all honesty, suggest that I know that this is better than what we've got. I mean, it could well be that to take the people who have the position of security guard at the hospital now and say, now part of your responsibility is to deal with these people in severe mental health crises. They're going to say, well, that requires a higher skill level and a higher pay level and a whole bunch of things. So by defining the solution, I think we may be shooting ourselves in the foot. So I'm going to vote against this motion as it stands now. I couldn't begin to rework it here. I certainly support the idea of let's make this as efficient and the best we can. But for any of us know sitting here, and perhaps with the exception of Councillor Jansen, we could be asking the province to spend the equivalent of several FTE RCMP officers to do this. So I just have those concerns that I thought I would put on the table.
Great, thank you. I'm not seeing any other hands, so I will call the question. Those in opposition to the motion? Councillor Parkinson opposes. Moving on to presentations. 8.1, we have Ravi Palmer, who is the chair of School District 62, Harry Cull, who is the secretary treasurer, and I also believe we have Scott Stinson, who is the superintendent, to do a brief presentation with us. So I will hand it off to the three of you.
Great, thank you, Mayor. Hopefully everyone can hear me.
You can.
Awesome. It's nice to see you all. For those of you who don't know me, my name is Ravi Parmar. I'm chair of the Sault School District Board of Education, and it's a pleasure to be with you tonight. I'm joined by my colleagues, Scott Stinson, who's the superintendent and chief executive officer of the district, as well as Harold Cull, our secretary treasurer and chief financial officer. I want to first of all recognize that I'm joining you from the traditional territories of the Coast Salish peoples, specifically the Esquimalt and Songhees First Nation, and as well acknowledge the Three Nations SD62 works with directly in our schools, and that's the Shianu Nation, Sauk Nation, including the West Coast, Pacheedaht Nation, the Chalnoth, and again, thank them for sharing their beautiful lands with us, especially on a beautiful day like it is today as we near the end of April. Before I get into why I'm here, I should obviously acknowledge that this last year has been challenging. It's been a while since I've been to a Colwood Council meeting. I know that I've quite enjoyed the opportunity to pack into your council chambers and hear a good meeting, but I know I'm like you getting tired of the Zoom thing or this Microsoft Teams thing, and hope one day very soon to be able to see you all in the same room. Again, we know that this pandemic has been challenging, but what has brought hope to me is our abilities to build stronger partnerships. And certainly Mayor Martin and I have had many conversations over the last year during this pandemic, probably more than we did prior to, just in a regular year. And so we should celebrate that and acknowledge that, because working together we've been able to accomplish a lot of things, not only during this pandemic, but for many years prior to, and setting the path for a very positive future relationship between the Sault School District and Mayor and Council. I could go on and on, but maybe what I'll do is I'll certainly just speak to the MOU, and then more than happy to take questions. And Scott and Harold are here certainly to provide any information you can. But the school district has certainly had a challenging year, but we're certainly looking forward. We're just in the process of adopting a new strategic plan. And one of the initiatives that the board is very much supported is again going out and formalizing and establishing those relationships with our partners, whether it's internally, our education partners in the district, or externally, our stakeholders like all of you. And so we bring before you a memorandum of understanding, formally establishing a relationship between Colwood Council and the Sioux School District Board of Education. And we've got many shared values. We serve a really diverse community that's changing and growing. And it's certainly an exciting time. It wouldn't be a meeting where I wouldn't say that the Sioux School District is for sure the fastest growing school district per capita in the province. And with that brings some challenges and lots of opportunities. And so we're excited to work with you on that. We know that there's many opportunities on shared playgrounds, shared amenity lands, like our beautiful recreation opportunities that all residents of Colwood, in fact, all residents across the island enjoy at Royal Bay Secondary School. And of course, a few walks away, you've got the future Royal Bay Elementary School that we're looking forward to building one day very soon. Just speaking to Councillor Jansen's points around mental health supports, we know that there's some significant challenges that the pandemic has raised. I know I've worked on this file for many years with Councillor Day on Victoria Family Court Youth Justice Committee, but we know that there's some significant challenges out here in the West Shore when it comes to the lack of supports and the growth of the population increasing. So what does this MOU do? It essentially formalizes and establishes a relationship that's already here. One of the things that I've been trying to work on is establishing a annual board and council meeting. I think it'd be fantastic for your organization and the Sioux School District, the board and mayor and council to come together once a year to talk about shared opportunities, our vision for the school district, your vision for the community you serve, and as well some of the challenges that face us, and as well also formalizing a twice-year meeting between the board chair and the mayor. And again, for me, this is about formalizing that. So for Mayor Martin and I, years down the road, our successors can be working from a set of precedents in terms of what established relationship has been there. So maybe I'll stop there. More than happy to answer any questions or also give you an update on what else is happening in the district. But it's nice to see you all, and I hope you all are doing well.
Thank you. Thank you very much for that, Robbie. We very much appreciate it. And I know I speak for all the council to say that we do sincerely value the relationship we have with the school district. And as we continue to focus on families, schools becomes, essential part of that fabric of who and what we are as a community. So I think it speaks volumes how well I think our two organizations work together. So thrilled with that. I will bring it an opportunity to just sort of ask any general questions, council. If there isn't any, I'm going to go straight to the recommendation and move that. So are there any discussion points? Looking for hands. Seeing none, then I'm going to go straight to the Oh, I do see a hand. Councillor Day.
Sorry, no, I was just offering to second your motion.
Oh, okay. Oh, okay. Thank you. We will do it that way. Yeah, I was just going to, sure, we'll do it that way. So I'll move the motion, seconded by Councillor Day. Is there any discussion on that? Seeing none, I will call the question. Those in opposition? Nobody opposes. So thank you so much, and excited to continue to move this forward.
Great. Thanks so much. Have a good night.
Thanks. Thank you, guys. We're going to move on to 8.2. And as I said, this was with Councillor Parkinson, just giving us a verbal update on what's happening at West Shore Park and Rec. Councillor Parkinson.
Thank you, Your Worship. Parks and Rec has, I think we've discussed a little bit, had some challenges last year with the COVID and a lot of the programs impacted. As this year began, there's been some obviously changes to the requirements. Some of the parts of the West Shore Parks and Rec are getting slightly better. Youth field sports are doing well. Golf is doing exceptionally well. There was a Netflix movie filmed in and about the rec center, which brought in some unexpected revenue. And the childcare and summer camps seem to be very popular and filling up fast. Perhaps some of the The downsides, the masks were required in the weight room recently. That dropped off attendance for a little while. It seems to be coming back. Adult fitness classes are shut down, and the staff are looking at maybe moving them outside as the weather improves. There are no adult sports, so that's a bit of a revenue hit. And the pool, while being fully booked and utilized to the extent it can be, that extent is much reduced from what it has been in years past. So overall, the initial part of this year trending slightly above budget, but of course very tenuous depending on what other policies provincial government come down with. A couple other things I should mention: the child care center renovations and the arena floor renovations are both on budget and on schedule, coming along nicely. We had a tour there the other week, and they're really coming together nicely. They're going to really enhance the facilities there at the rec center, so we can all be proud of that. And while I have the floor, I did want to mention something that maybe doesn't get touted enough from the rec center, but maybe should be, and that's just the energy efficiency that's been achieved over the years. Greenhouse gases were 4,900 metric tons of CO2 in 2011. They're down to 4,200 metric tons in 2019. Obviously, significantly less 2020 with the COVID. Big reductions, which turned into a cost savings of roughly $70,000. But over the last year, with some new air handling units for the pool, some heat recovery systems built into the new arena, some LED lighting, and some work within the childcare projects, I expect those greenhouse gas reductions will continue in the future. So I think I'm happy to answer any questions people may have, but I think in fact it's a pretty well-run facility, and we should all be quite proud of how well it provides the services that it provides for our community. And if there's any questions, I'll do my best to answer them.
Excellent. Thank you, Councillor Parkinson. I'm not seeing any hands, but I guess I have one question for you. The renovated work on the ice rink that's presently happening, when do they expect that will be concluded?
They're aiming for the end of June.
End of June. And so will ice go in September? I'm assuming we're not going to put ice in over the summer, or
there's pretty heavy demand for summer ice, and I believe it'll go in the old arena, and then the Q Center will be used for dry floor activities.
Okay, great. Yeah. Thank you. And I'm not seeing any other hands, so thank you for the update, Councillor Parkinson.
Happy to do it.
Moving on to new business. So first of all, 9.1. 9.1 is a proclamation policy, and this is a recommendation from the April 19th Finance and Governance Committee meeting. The motion before us is that the proclamation policy be adopted. Are there any objections? Oh, I see lots of hands, so I guess there are. So I will go to Councillor Kobayashi first. Councillor Kobayashi.
I was just going to move the motion.
Oh, okay. So okay. Thank you for doing that. So I'll let council know what I'm attempting to do is, again, working with what the training that we had with Ellie was the recommendations that are coming out of all the committees. What I was going to do was just say, here's what the motion is, ask if there's any objections, and then if there aren't, because they've already been discussed at committee, I would just say the motion is passed unanimously. So that's where I was going to work through these. But I'm happy to stop and do that. And thank you very much for facilitating, Councillor Kobayashi. We're just changing just now. So we're going to start again. I'm just going to do that one just so that everybody understands the flow of it. So we do have a recommendation that the proclamation policy be adopted. Are there any objections? I'm not seeing any hands. There being none, the motion is passed unanimously by council. The second is public hearing policy, and this is a recommendation from the April 19th Finance and Governance Committee, and the recommendation is that the public hearing policy be adopted. Are there any objections? Seeing none, the motion is passed unanimously. Moving on to 9.3, this is Jill Collison, our senior planner, and this is in regards to the Parks and Recs master plan, in regards to the endorsement consideration. There is a recommendation that council endorse for master planning purposes, the Parks and Recreation master plan. But I will look to staff first to see if they wish to comment before I just go ahead. I see Ms. Collington has turned her camera on, so I think she wishes to speak.
Thank you, Your Worship. So I'll just give a quick overview and then turn it over to our consultant, Jana Zielinski. So as you know, for the last year, we've been working with Blanark on the Parks and Recreation Master Plan project. And tonight, as you mentioned, we're looking for your endorsement of our first ever Parks and Recreation Master Plan. So we were last in front of you in February when we offered the draft plan for initial review and seek direction to go out for public review and comment. So following that meeting in February, it was formally referred to adjacent municipalities, our local First Nations, as well as partners identified within the plan, which included West Shore Parks and Rec Society, the School District, Parks Canada, Royal Roads, and the Capital Regional District. The draft plan was also sent directly to over 75 other park and recreation stakeholders, who in turn also then shared through their networks via email and newsletters. The plan is available on the city's website and has been since February 10th. So now we return tonight with a summary of edits that have come from public input and an updated draft of the plan for your consideration. So comments received have been summarized with corresponding edits in table 1 of the report in front of you. And main feedback areas were found within the arts and cultural facilities and programming, environmental protection, trail impacts, youth and play amenities, as well as budget information and funding strategies. So I will turn it over to Jana, who has a brief presentation for you, and then we will look for a recommendation. Thank you.
Great. Thank you, Jill, and thanks everyone. Can you guys see my screen?
So sorry, we are having it, you are very quiet.
Oh, okay. Let me just see if I can turn up some volume here. I nicely put my headset up, so
there you go.
It wasn't there, so that should be better.
Yes, we can hear you now.
Thanks for pointing that out before I got started. All right, so you guys can see my screen and you can hear me now. Perfect. So good evening. I am really pleased to be back to share an update on the Colwood Parks and Recreation Master Plan. And thanks again for having me. It's been such a pleasure working on this project, so we're pretty excited to come back today. So I'm just going to bring forward a really brief update on where we are in the process and some of the phase 3 engagement findings. And then the main focus for today is outlining key refinements that we've made to the master plan based on the public, stakeholder, and city feedback. So I'll close with some remaining steps, and then we'll be able to answer any questions that council might have. So after a journey over the past year, we are approaching our target of finalizing Colwood's first Parks and Recreation Master Plan. And it's taken the community through a series of steps that gathered broad ideas for the future first, explored some options, developed a draft plan, and then finally worked through refinements and finalization. So it has been quite an adventure as we navigated all of this through COVID, but we had some great opportunities to connect and hear from residents and really get a better understanding of what their desires are for the future of parks and recreation. So the process diagram shows the 3 steps that we undertook, and we now are in phase 3, which has been focused on developing and finalizing the master plan. And since our last update, as Jill mentioned, we've completed our 3rd round of engagement, and we've been able to update the draft based on these comments. So phase 3 engagement was conducted through referrals to stakeholders along with the public invitation to review and comment on the draft. And through the engagement feedback period, we heard from a broad range of both stakeholders and members of the public. And we were also able to consider comments back from city staff and council. And the feedback included a range of comments. There was a lot of important details that we needed to pick up and make sure that they were incorporated, as well as some key themes that informed the updates to the master plan. So Jill mentioned those, and I'm going to go through them briefly and talk a little bit about the changes that resulted. So a lot of the comments that we received really suggest that arts and culture facilities is such an important part of Colwood's recreational services, and there was an interest for the plan to make sure that we were covering this topic well enough. So to address that gap, recommendation C14 has been updated to provide a lot more detail on arts and culture considerations, including the recognizing the role that arts and culture play in creating sense of place and community identity, referencing the OCP's action to develop an arts and culture plan, recognizing the need for space to support arts and culture activities in existing and future recreation areas, including identification of opportunities that could happen as part of future development, supporting inclusivity and planning for arts and culture, and nurturing arts and culture collaboration with local Indigenous groups and stakeholders, and seeking opportunities to advance arts and culture within park upgrades and public art programs. So from this, 2 new actions were added. C14.5 brings forward the OCP recommendation to develop a specific arts and culture plan that will allow the community to focus in on the details for strengthening arts and culture in the community. And C14.6 recommends establishing a process to regularly review parks and recreation programming and continue to identify and fill gaps as this community continues to evolve. Through the reviews, participants identified a range of potential improvements to better recognize and enhance environmental protection and appreciation within the plan. So one of the guiding principles for the Parks and Recreation Plan is to protect and enhance our environment. And so we know this topic is really near and dear to the heart of Colwood residents. So we wanted to update the plan to ensure that this lens is really carefully applied to the recommendations. So some of the key updates included emphasizing environmental protection as a key criteria when considering park acquisitions, ensuring that recommendations clearly include environmental considerations, so it's really top of mind in future park management planning and park improvements, and linking to policy recommendation number 9 that outlines environmental management and an approach to parks acquisition, planning, and management, including the need for ongoing collaboration with organized stewardship groups. So 4 actions were updated as a result. C4.1 and 4.2 related to acquisition were updated to include the criteria of environmental considerations in all future parkland acquisition. And C20.1 for Ocean View Park and 24.1 for Havenwood Park were updated to better highlight environmental management as a key priority for future planning and improvements for these parks. So generally, trails networks have been really well supported throughout the entire planning process. The draft plan included identification of general desired connections for trail networks, notably recommendation C2, which is the beach to mountain trail route network. So there were specific comments on trail routing identified through the feedback, in particularly looking at places where trail routes could be in close proximity to existing residential properties. So concerns such as privacy, littering and vandalism, view impacts, wildlife impacts, and traffic and parking congestion were raised. To recognize these concerns and to clarify that more detailed routing and design will be required prior to trails being created, the master plan's been updated to, first of all, clarify that lines are really meant to be illustrative only and that future field analysis and design would be required, including addressing potential impacts. We did add some more guidance on future trail design criteria, including siting and selecting locations for new trails and access points based on site conditions and in order to minimize potential impacts, integrating privacy buffers to protect existing properties, minimizing view impacts, and protecting existing landscape features. So the trail routing was also updated to provide a more general description of key connections rather than really defining very specific routes. And this is basically to allow a little bit of flexibility so that when more detailed analysis is happening, when these projects are advanced, the best routes can be found. And then the lines on the map were updated to indicate that there's a buffer between trail line work and private properties, although recognizing everything in a master plan is intentionally meant to be fuzzy. So the updates are really intended to clarify that the trails are not meant to be built directly from master plan level analysis, but rather to be investigated and carefully designed within their context during advancement. Participants in the process have been very supportive of increasing access to play in the directions proposed in the draft master plan. So one of the questions that has arose was related to the typical lifespan of play equipment and how the city can effectively plan for renewal over time. So life cycle planning for play equipment does have a lot of considerations. It can be level of use, accessibility, quality of manufacturing, materials, and so on. That said, we were able to add some information from local play representatives and historical data and provide some standard play equipment lifespans to help frame renewal planning efforts. So action C6.3 was updated to include life cycle planning in the development of a playground upgrade and replacement schedule. And the idea here is that the city is able to look ahead and prepare for their playground renewal on an ongoing basis using this information. Another place where we heard positive feedback with some supplemental ideas was around youth amenities. So again, participants were generally positive about development of a destination all-wheel skate park and suggested expanding this concept to identify more skatable opportunities within the city. So ideas like singular bowls within a park activity area or some ramps or urban plaza surfaces that are actually designed to be skatable, especially for younger or learning audience, were felt to maybe warrant consideration and help give young people a chance to really be out and participating in the community. So this led to the addition of action C7.4, which is integrating skate opportunities to consider addition of new outdoor skate facilities and skatable spaces in Colwood, in addition to a new destination all-wheel skate park. And finally, there was a request during the draft review was for incorporation of a budget estimate for undertaking the full set of actions contained in the planning document. So in order to create an estimate for the total capital cost of recommendations, we used an upper cost rate for each action and then added a contingency to recognize that this is broad stroke master planning. So an estimate at the master planning level comes with a number of conditions because it is so broad scale. So first of all, we just want to make sure it's important to note that cumulative costing of capital recommendations is maintained to be considered a planning level estimate, and the costs are always going to continue to be clarified through future steps in planning and design for specific projects. Estimates do only consider capital costs in total, but they don't necessarily determine or split how the funding sources may be developed. So it's presumed that parks and recreation projects are going to be funded using a variety of strategies. And in some cases, there may be decisions not to proceed with certain projects until outside sources of funding can be secured. And so for that reason, estimates in this plan are always meant to be planning level and not meant for direct translation into more detailed calculations or considerations. Estimates don't include things like future land acquisition costs or development of potential long-term projects that are likely beyond the 10-year planning horizon, because a lot of these have costs that can vary really, really widely and would be difficult to determine at this time. And next steps in park management plans or implementation projects are going to provide more clarity on costs. And so estimating will need to continue to be updated and completed as more focused and more detailed understanding comes forward. It's notable that inflation isn't included in the estimate and that there are some estimate components that are annual costs. So for example, if you're regularly investing in playground upgrades, estimating is done for a 10-year period, which is essentially the planning time horizon for the plan. So cost estimating at the master planning level is a really useful tool for making planning level decisions, but it's still always important to recognize that it is fairly broad stroke. Another component that we did add on the budget estimating was identification of suggested funding sources for plan actions. So this was done to reflect that parks and recreation are typically not just funded through taxation, but they quite often use a variety of sources ranging from senior government funding to development contributions to partnerships and more. So a suggested funding sources summary is added for each action so that that can be considered when selecting and advancing projects. So in addition to the key themes, we did also make a number of updates to address small and detailed comments. So for final steps, we are looking to revise and finalize the Parks and Recreation Master Plan and incorporate any further feedback. And then once complete, the plan can hopefully carry on into implementation. And I'll say that through this process, the community has really articulated some wonderful hopes and visions for a connected network of parks and trails that really reflects the green and natural and resilient character of Colwood, and we really hope that this plan can help make those into a reality. So I have here the recommendation that's in the council report, and I'll say thanks again for having me here today, and I would be pleased to answer any questions.
Thank you very much for the presentation. I will go to hands. I have a couple. The first will be Councillor Day. Councillor Day.
Thank you. I'm just wondering there, I think I just saw a slight nod to this notion, but when I read the report, it didn't jump out at me. So feel free to correct me. But for many years, youth have been seeking a community space, which is still needed. The community space that they might be able to use would support them in their innovations, partnering and program development by youth for youth. So I just wonder if you could tell me what the master plan sees for that.
Thanks, Councillor Day. And that's a really great question. We did hear quite a bit from youth, especially related to a lot of the outdoor spaces during this process. And so one of the recommendations in the plan is C14 around indoor recreation facilities. And that includes a whole variety of potential ideas for indoor components to go forward when the city is considering future opportunities. You know, I will say that I think a lot of the comments about youth, or a lot of the spaces that youth were looking for, focused in on recreational components or arts and culture components. But it is probably something that could be emphasized a little bit further in that recommendation around the idea of having more specific youth spaces within the indoor setting.
Thank you.
I'm sorry. Councillor Day, please continue if you have more questions.
No, all good. Thank you.
Okay, thank you. Councillor Kobayashi.
Thank you very much, Your Worship. Through you to Jana, I just want to compliment you on this. You know, this was a pretty big task, and for us to have our very first master plan when it comes to parks and recreation is phenomenal. I think, you know, you can nitpick this thing to death, but you know, for the first one, I think you've done an exceptional job, and I just want to compliment you on that. And I like how you brought a community in this. And it's great because I could talk to community members and they're related this to me. So I think you did really well there. My only, and the one thing that I was so happy to see is finally there's a document that now refers to our arts and culture. And, you know, the only thing that, you know, maybe this is a debate, not maybe for this meeting here, but it's certainly, I would love to see this pulled away and have its own separate plan. Actually, it's, you know, it's not a subset of the Parks and Rec master plan. It is its own plan. But I just want to compliment you and say thank you very much for your hard work on this.
Thank you.
Thank you, Councillor Kobayashi. Councillor Parkinson.
Thank you, Worship, and basically echoing what my colleague Councillor Kobayashi said. I thought it was a great report, really well done, excellent work. Can I ask one question though? And that's on page 6 of your report. One of your bullets says, parks operations require mandate and support for management of social issues in city parklands. And frankly, that sort of scared me a little bit. I just wasn't quite sure what you meant by that and what that would really look like.
Thanks, Councillor Parkinson, and that's a great question. I have to go back to page 6 to remind myself. I think one of this comment, and this is actually a challenge and not necessarily something that we're going to resolve in Parks and Recreation, is some of the challenges that what we see in parks are a lot of the social circumstances that are happening in community often show up in parks because those are the public spaces and they are accepting and inviting to everyone. And so I think one of the things that we've been seeing and experiencing a lot is the idea that, you know, the maintenance procedures and taking care of those parks when they're sometimes more heavily impacted can be a bit of a challenge, and making sure that that's considered in our planning and making sure that the facilities that we have are accommodating everyone in a very safe way.
Okay, yeah, thank you. Yeah, it'll be a challenge. So just a few points that came to mind that I somewhat related to this, but more I think perhaps just things that staff could jot down and keep on the side of their desk as things to sort of start to work on. You did talk about some of the parkland that may not be needed or maybe just you know, no benefit as park, and we should really sit down and decide what we want to do about that. The other issue that I think we should be looking at as a community is this is a great plan. And, you know, I think you base it on 10 years population growth out to about 28,000. Of course, the trouble is we hit 28,000 and we get over it, and it gets harder and harder if in fact we require more parkland, you know, harder to find, harder to buy, all that kind of stuff. So again, and I think this is probably a staff exercise or something, but it's sort of looking, okay, well, you know, over the long haul, over the 30, 40 years, where is the city going to grow to, and what should we be looking to set aside today? Because it's going to be a lot easier to do today than it is in 25 or 30 years. So just a thought. And then, of course, I think, and I've spoken about this before, as Royal Bay and Royal Beach and Olympic View finish their parks master plans, probably a quick little document that says, okay, now we're at these ratios compared to what we were before would be beneficial for us to understand whether the ratios we have in this report today are still current or whether they've been addressed to some extent by those projects. So, but again, I just really want to compliment you on a job well done. Thank you.
Excellent, thank you. I'm not seeing any other hands. We do have the motion that is in front of us. I guess for this one, I will look for a mover and seconder. I think it's important enough that I'd like to have that. So Councillor Day has moved it. Councillor Baxter has seconded it. We have had a significant, I'm just going to clear hands again. Is there any other discussion? And Councillor Jansen wishes to speak. Councillor Jansen?
It was an accidental thumbing, sorry.
Okay. I kept turning putting your hand down and you kept putting it up, and I was thinking, you really want to speak to this. Okay. I'm not seeing any other hands, so I am going to call the question. Those in opposition, please raise your hands. Nobody opposes. So the motion passes, and as I think a lot of councillors have said, very much appreciate the staff work, and thank you for this. It's a very exciting time for us. It's incredible potential that we have here in our community. I'm going to ask that we just drop that slide off, please. Thank you, and that returns us back here. And for those who are watching online, and I will let council know as well, I just received a notice about a half hour ago that black bear that has been wandering Fort Rod Hill and everything seems to now be wandering down Heather Bell Road. So please, for residents, anybody listening, just give the bear space to get away. I think that's the most important thing, is just give it space. Moving on to 9.4. This is Yasmin Hernandez, one of our planners, and this is in regards to 452 Pelican Drive. Ms. Hernandez, do you wish to speak to it?
Yes, I have prepared a PowerPoint presentation. I don't see it in the agenda. I hope I can share my screen, and then I can share the presentation with you all. Just a second. Okay. So I am speaking tonight on the development variance permit application received for 452 Pelican Drive. Development variance permit 21003. The staff recommendation is as included in the report, recommended approval of the variance. The property in question is located on Pelican Drive, adjacent to a lot that has been slotted for road dedication, and with two homes that are south of the property and adjacent to them. The lot is a panhandle lot, so it's quite set back from the road Pelican Drive itself. And the topography of those properties, all of that neighborhood is on the hillside, and so the top of the hill would start. I suppose it's a propeller place, I believe, and it gradually goes downhill down to Pelican Drive as you drive south on Pelican Drive. This particular lot, the elevation of the road is set at about 80 meters above sea level or geodetic, and then as you go into the lot, then the elevation drops quite significantly once you are into the lot and out of the panhandle. When you look at the adjacent property south of the lot, they are set 454 Pelican Drive, for example, is set much closer to Pelican Drive with its respective 6 meters, 7 meters setback, and at an elevation of about 75 meters geodetic. And when you look at the building footprint, at the proposed location of the building footprint of 452 Pelican Drive, it would be in and around the 70, I believe the geodetic elevation of the average of where this building pad would be is 70 meters geodetic. So you really get a sense for the challenges of the elevation on this lot, how it's a narrow panhandle that takes you into the building pad where this new home may be constructed, and the back of the lot drops quite sharply to the southeast, I suppose, corner. There is an additional challenges or just context to the land, that there is several covenants registered on these properties at the time of subdivision. One that includes protection to the trees area, as well as a protection as a buffer of 20 meters. That looks for geotechnical stability of the slope. And all of that will be captured through the building permit process, requiring the applicant to provide the specific studies and report to meet the commitments made through those covenants. The requirements is to confirm stability, minimize retaining wall, and protect the trees. So all of those details and conformance with the covenant will be checked for and have been discussed with the applicant and are part of the building permit review, but form part of the analysis and thought that has been given to this application and the request. This application started off live as a Board of Variance application that came forward early this year. So the proposed building plan has already been granted an order by the Board of Variance of Colwood to reduce the rear yard setback in order to enable the shifting of the building away from a rock outcrop. And so it's pushed further back than the RBCD2 zone requires with a minor setback. I think it reduced the 10-meter required rear yard setback to 9 meters. So that was a Board of Variance order granted in February. And the application tonight, it's requesting that council may consider a variance to allow the home to be constructed at a height of 11.75 meters, which is higher than the maximum permitted height in the RBCD2 zone for estate lots. That is currently set by the bylaw at 8.5 meters. If you've looked at the drawings that are accompanying this application, you can see that the elevation of the site is quite drastic. The change in elevation is quite drastic. So at the rear of the property, it looks like a two and a half story building. But at the front, the street fronting elevation is a 1.5 story structure. The way in which height is measured is using the average of the existing grade of the property. And given the steepness of the proposed roof line, so this roof line is very steep, therefore the height is measured to the top of the roof. Whereas with less steep roof lines, we measure height to the midpoint of the roof. So there is I suppose there's no gross floor area in that very pitch roof portion. And the profile, it does get lessened because it's just so steep, but the way in which our regulations for height are mean that the height, the 11.75 is a measurement to the very, very top of a very steep pitch roof. One of the several restricted covenants that I've been discussing that are associated with the lands include a building scheme that is registered to the city of Colwood as the only signatory to the document. And while we are not the administrators, we are the only people, the only signatories to the legal document. And these building scheme include specific design guidelines associated with height. And while there's very specific requirements for specific lots throughout the subdivision regarding the maximum height that should ever be permitted or considered in specific lots. But those specific restrictions are not applicable to this particular lot. So when we review the application against the building schemes and the goals and intent of those design guidelines for the subdivision, we find it to be consistent with the intent to have pitch roofs to be the main architectural design or element, to have diversity in the steepness of the roofs, and to add uniqueness to each home and element. As I discussed before, the proposed building sitting benefits from a reduced rear yard setback that works with the topography of the site to try to minimize the impact on the rock outcrops, and it will work to maintain the treed areas per the covenants that are on title. Given that the lot is a panhandle, and how the topography works on Pelican Drive, and how the road is curving in that particular location, it is, in staff's opinion, height variance that will have minimal marginal impacts on the views of the adjacent neighbors, considering that there's only 2 properties to the south that are immediately adjacent, and the properties to the north are buffered from this property by a lot that is slotted for road dedication, and a lot that is dedicated as park. We have followed the Local Government Act and the requirements for written notifications, and notices were sent out to the neighbors within 75 meters of the property on April 9th, 2021, and they were invited to submit comment to council for your consideration tonight. And a development sign has been posted on the property. The options are outlined for council on the report. The applicant has also, in addition to considering the development variance permit decision, the applicant has also asked that staff include a request for the Board of Variance application fees of $500 to be refunded, on account that he feels that if he had been aware of the limited jurisdiction or the conflict in jurisdiction of the Board of Variance prior to making an application, he would have opted for a different avenue to pursue his request. So that is the additional request by the applicant that is put forward. And that's everything that I have for you tonight.
Thank you. I will go to questions first. Councillor Jansen.
Thank you, Your Worship. I've been down there to walk this lot in company with Councillor Parkinson, and the height difference between the properties, and I mean just the geographical height. The next property up the road, which I understand has registered a complaint about this, is a significant distance away, and it is got the park dedication and the roadway dedication in between. But also, if you go stand on this lot, it's way uphill. The height difference is dramatic. So clearly, this variance with regard to the height will have zero impact on anyone's views above this property, other than I guess they can see it. Further, standing there, I realize there's probably no trees that need to come down whatsoever, and they're using site adaptive principles. You know, it wasn't that long ago to resolve the height difference. They probably would have brought in a blasting company to take out the 3 meters underneath the rock. I'm far more amenable to the approach that's being taken here, where they're going to use the scale and the rock outcroppings as part of the building foundation. So I don't have a problem with this, and I think it's important that we do this by way of motion, is my opinion, Your Worship, and I'm going to move the staff recommendation.
Okay, thank you. Hold on 2 seconds. I'm just going to take names so that I don't lose the list. Baxter, Day, and Logan. So I'm going to clear hands. Do I have a seconder to Councillor Jansen's motion? Councillor Parkinson has seconded it. So Councillor Parkinson, you get to jump the line because you are the seconder. Do you wish to speak to it before I go to Councillor Baxter, then Day, then Logan?
I'll just say a couple of words. I was heartened to hear that this this building conforms with the building scheme for the whole subdivision. To me, that's important. I understand that we have all sorts of regulations for all sorts of reasons. It seems like with a different roof, the height would be halfway up the roof, and with this kind of roof, the height is at the top of the roof. Seems like a little minor thing to me. So I'm not quite sure about the objections Mr. Alexander has raised about process. I have to believe our staff is on top of those and is following the correct process. But as far as fitting this building in the site, I mean, it was never going to be easy on a tough site. And it looks to me like they've done a pretty good job. Thank you.
Thank you. Thank you. Councillor Baxter.
Yeah, I've had experience dealing with Mr. Alexander for years and years. And I know that his job is to raise doubts in the minds of the people about to make the decision. And he's done that. And so I would like to hear from staff on the comments made by Mr. Alexander.
Thank you very much, Councillor Baxter. And through the chair, I would like to handle that question if Yasmin is okay, if Ms. Hernandez is okay with that. We have reviewed the concerns from Mr. Alexander. We've sought external advice in regards to it. It's interesting because staff originally took this matter to the board and then were advised by Mr. Alexander that wasn't the appropriate place, that the board is expressly disallowed to consider some of the variance considerations brought forward in the actual covenant document. So that speaks to, well, then who is to consider it? It would suggest by its lack of clarity that would mean that council is to hear to it, and the recommendations that we've received is that if not the board, then it must be council. Those considerations also have fallen around due process. If council is concerned about the process, the question may come back to where did this restriction or building scheme get derived? It is a building scheme that was considered by council in August of 2001. It was not a factor of the rezoning of the land, but was, interestingly enough, a consideration of the development permit of the land at that time. So the resolve was, as council considered the development permit, that a building scheme be applied. It is true that building scheme remain. However, the development permit layers, as Yasmin or Ms. Hernandez has pointed out, have been met and have been considered. However, if council is concerned over process and about that stepping of who is the appropriate body or where should council hear from, it may elect to direct staff to re-host a public hearing in regards to this variance consideration before passing a resolve. If that is the will of council, that would be that method of going forward. Hope that answers your question.
If I can just clarify.
Excuse me, can I make a point of order here, Your Worship? If this is part of a development permit for that subdivision, I'm not so sure. I wasn't the lead consultant on that development permit. I certainly wouldn't have done the building schemes, but I may be involved in the development permit, in which case I think I'm going to have to excuse myself from this conversation. I didn't follow that line, and I apologize. Obviously, 20 years ago, not much of it remains in my brain. But I think if I may, I'm going to step away, and I apologize for not doing this sooner.
Yeah. So Councillor Parkinson, what I will do is have you turn off your camera as well, just so that you're not influencing anyone, and then what we'll do is bring you back once this item's dealt with. So I will go back to Councillor Baxter. Councillor Baxter was clarifying a question.
Right. I just wanted to clarify. So Mr. Mulder, you don't believe that it's necessary to go back to a public hearing?
No, so don't say that. It's the recommendation that we have is that it may not be necessary. However, there is a covenant in place. And if council felt as though that was a prudent step to avoid legal conflict, that may be the simplest resolve forward. It has not come out that that is a recommendation from the review party at this time. However, it is an option to be expressed.
All right, thank you.
I will then go to Councillor Day.
Thank you. My question is for, I think, Mr. Molnar, because I think I heard you say that you did seek legal advice.
I'm sorry for the correction, Councillor Day, and through the chair. No, I did not use those words. I indicated that we received comment in regards.
Comment in regards. So are you referring to Mr. Alexander's letter?
Mr. Alexander's letter has been forwarded to the appropriate parties, and we have received comment in that regard.
Okay. So I would be a whole lot more comfortable if I understood what the legal comment on this file was, which obviously I cannot do in a public meeting. So I'll leave it at that for a moment and just ask my other couple of questions that I have. My other question was, why did it go to the Board of Variance first? Was that a staff direction to the proponents, or was that their choice?
Thank you very much. Through the chair to Councillor Day, there are numerous properties on this subdivision that have received consideration by the Board of Variance in history. All of those properties and that consideration was received and resolved without conflict or consideration of the design covenant, which restricted that enablement. So staff is aware. Mr. Alexander has raised the matter, and I appreciate it with this file. And so we can work to not repeat the considerations of the past and make sure that it's tabled up appropriately for you today.
I'm sorry, that did not answer my question. My question was, why did it go to the Board of Variance? Was that a direction from staff, or was that the resident's choice?
The staff do not provide direction to applicants in regards to the variance route. What we do is table considerations for them to option. If it is considered a hardship, the applicant has the choice of pleading their case to the board. The applicant picked that route, and staff felt that that was appropriate based on the previous variance considerations that had been considered at the board level. Mr. Alexander did spoke in a very similar manner at the board that he did tonight with additional information tonight. And the board appropriately said, thank you very much. We will not consider this. And then staff started working towards resolve.
Thank you. And just to bring it back to top of mind, we did hear from a neighbor to the south who felt impacted by being overlooked by this home. And I would like to move that this be referred to a future meeting after we've had an opportunity to be briefed on the legal implications.
Okay, I have a referral motion. I will lower hands and look for a seconder. Do I have a seconder to that? It is seconded by Councillor Kobayashi. And there's a staff, I just want to clarify, is there discussion on referrals or none? I believe there isn't any discussion on referrals.
Sorry, Mayor Martin, you mean in regards to the referrals that we
Oh, no, sorry, I was looking more, sorry, I'm not looking to you, Mr. Molnar. I was looking to Ms. Wickens or our CAO on referrals.
Thank you, Your Worship. What can be discussed is the when, but not if.
Okay. And I think we already heard the when would be to the next council meeting. So I will call the question on the referral. Those in opposition to the referral, please raise your hands. Councillor Jansen, Councillor Logan, and Mayor Martin oppose. So that creates a tie, which means the motion does not pass. Correct, staff? I'm not hearing any opposition to that, so that sounds that I am correct. So that will take us back to the main motion. However, on the main motion, before I come to Councillor Logan, Councillor Parkinson was the seconder who has now had to step away from this, so I do not actually have a seconder to the motion. Is there a seconder to that motion? It looks like Councillor Logan will be the seconder. So I will go back to the list, which is Councillor Logan. Councillor Logan.
Thank you, Worship. So what I heard Yasmin say is that there's a 5 meter difference between the closest neighbor, 454 and 452, which is substantial. And I also heard that really, and correct me if I'm wrong here, Yasmin, that the only reason why we're kind of here tonight looking for this height variance is simply because of the pitch of the roof. And had we had the roof had been a different design, we likely wouldn't be here because it would have fit within our guidelines, but our guidelines indicated that no, the steepness says we measure you differently. And I note that that really from the road, this is a 1.5 story house, which is pretty in keeping. In fact, probably smaller in scale in terms of height than many of the homes in the neighborhood. Many of the homes are 2 stories or more. And I also note that we've actually granted some variance and made some changes to other lots in that general area just to address some of the issues of topography. And to take advantage of the topography as well. So I did go by the site, and I think this is pretty reasonable. I think it's our regulations on roof design really had an impact in terms of why we're here, and so I think it's reasonable, and I will be supporting the motion. Thank you.
Thank you.
And I know. So the 3 stories that Councillor Day was referring to in her chat is from behind, is rear view, but the front view from the street is a 1.5 stories, as I understand it.
Great. Okay, thank you. Now this is I'm going to enjoy doing this next. So I have a person who wishes to speak a second time, which is Councillor Jansen. So I am going to have to look to council to get approval for him to speak a second time. So
just as a point of order, Your Worship, I moved the motion with some commentary and really never entered into the discussion. But I'll leave it with you.
I would suggest, Councillor Jansen, that once you made the motion, you've spoken to it. But I am going to call so I'm going to look to council. I'm going to lower hands. Council, is there any opposition to Councillor Jansen speaking a second time? Seeing none, I will allow Councillor Jansen to speak a second time. Councillor Jansen.
Only because Councillor Parkinson is in the penalty box, he would have opposed it. So I've heard all this, and just to educate people, this proponent has been navigating this process with much difficulty and has done everything that has been asked by the city, as far as the variance committee, as far as coming before council and making a pitch as well. And I don't understand what is so specifically unique about this piece of property. And as far as the legalese and the technical issues, there isn't a lineup of people from neighboring properties that have caused us issues, and variances have been issued to most of the properties down there. So I don't understand what some of the trepidation is. Honestly, staff has done the research. They're comfortable. If they're comfortable, I'm comfortable. And I can tell you that the proponent has done everything that's been asked, and they're at their wits' end to some degree with getting moving on this project. It's a home for residents that are going to come to our community that fits with the neighborhood. And thank you, Your Worship.
Thank you. Councillor Baxter wishes to speak a second time. I'm going to need to do the exact same thing again. Councillor, does anyone oppose Councillor Baxter speaking for a second time? Seeing, oh, Councillor. Sorry, I'm sorry. It was very funny. Councillor Jansen has opposed that. Surprise, surprise. So, Councillor Baxter, go ahead.
Yeah, Councillor Jansen said staff were comfortable with going ahead, and that's not exactly what I heard from staff. What I heard from staff was that they were giving us the option to check legal opinions, but not neither recommending it nor saying it wasn't necessary. That's how I interpret it. If staff are saying something different, then I think they should say it rather than Councillor Jansen.
Okay, thank you. Mr. Molnar, do you wish to comment?
Thank you very much, Mayor Martin. To Councillor Baxter, this I'm going to reiterate Councillor Jensen's comments to say that this applicant has done an excessive amount of work. They've also been through this process numerous times because they were considered by the board. We had to go through a bunch of considerations, and they've been held up to the DP requirements for geotechnical form and character in a like format to bring about the aspects of this covenant as best resolved. That doesn't seem to be reducing the concern from adjacent properties as represented by Mr. Alexander. And so therefore staff respect that and have tried to follow it through as best as possible. In that consideration, we've looked at the previous development variance considerations. And in fact, this property was considered in 2017 for a height variance on its own without considering the covenant as it restricts to it. So it seems that there's consideration upon consideration, as well as adjacent variances that are being granted. The reason why staff have presented the report in the manner that it has is because of the diligence that has been gone through by the applicant. The option that was presented by staff for the public hearing would just be so that council could flush out the opinions of the neighbors, weigh that in consideration unto itself, and then frankly consider the variance as presented tonight. So there is an extra do if council felt that they wish to consider factors of the covenant as it sits in place, which is the neighborhood context. That would be obtained through the public hearing. I hope that answers Councillor Baxter's and provide a little bit of clarity, because Councillor Baxter is correct. I haven't advised one way or the other, just trying to table the information as we're learning it.
Thank you.
Thank you. I do see the proponent, Mr. Preston, wishing to make a comment. So Mr. Preston.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor, Council. Yeah, myself and my business partner, Guy Cunningham, own Paul's Builders, and we've been working with this our client, Natalie Bandit, here for many, many months. And as echoed before you, it has been an incredibly frustrating process. We have tried our very best to follow every guideline, that's being required upon us. We were encouraged that the variance process was the appropriate process to go through. We went down that, and then we learned the day of that we couldn't ask for what we were asking for in terms of a height variance, setting us back probably 3 months. And as you can recognize, the building costs have skyrocketed in the last 3 months. So my client not only was out the $500 for the variance permit for the variance application, but is now out literally thousands and thousands of dollars in terms of increased building costs. Not your problem, not why we're here, but this lot, as indicated, is an incredibly tricky lot, substantial elevations. For the untrained eye, yeah, when somebody looks at height and says, yes, you're 11 meters over, that's not how it's measured. It's measured off the back pins, the average grade. Back pins, front pins, you measure that. So when you look at a lot that's got essentially a cliff in the front, where you're going to have a child fall off and die if you put it too far forward, gross negligence, I can't do that. Clear conscience, and just it would never pass. The engineering would be incredible. So that's why we had to push this. I've worked with all of the neighbors on this project. I've gone to the 3 adjacent neighbors, and I've got actually fairly good support. I brought them all on site. I showed them. They were all very supportive for the most part. The one down below, they're not happy that a house is going to be there. However, we put a cottage roof on that side of the property instead of a gable, which actually increases the height. And I'll explain that in a second here. The reason we did that is so they don't have to stare at a giant gable full of siding on the side of it. And then when you put a cottage roof on, you're looking at a sloped roof all the way to the top pitch, if that makes any sense. I hope it does to many of you. That was done to mitigate the view and the impact to the neighbor. Even though I have it's a 1.5-story house. It's not a 3-story house from behind. It's a 2-story. It's a walkout basement is all that is. The rendering's just showing that because of the dramatic grade, you probably have to have a pad that has some steps down to any little grass pad that you have down below. The neighbor, when they initially had a rendering a number of years ago, had the stairs on the outside of the house. And the neighbors weren't thrilled with that rendering because they didn't want to look at an ugly set of stairs. This client has gone to the extent of saying, I want to put the stairs inside my garage so I don't disturb the neighbor, so that I don't know how many people that would take up a good chunk of their garage to put the stairs inside so that their neighbor doesn't have to be offended by the stairs. This client is going above and beyond. We pushed the house back to the very back of the lot and then asked for another meter so that we would mitigate the impact from the side view of the property, so that you're not basically hovering over top of the property. You're basically side by side. And the only individual here that's showing any real contention to this house is the person that's got essentially a football field between us. And I'll pay your attention to the fact that you have the neighbor right in front who had no issue, and so in fact said, I showed him the rendering and said he's looking forward to seeing the house up. And that one is probably the one that's going to be staring at the house the most. And that's in lot 454. It appears as though he's got an 11-meter variance. So to say that this has to go to a different process would make a mockery of your process here. You can't say, I'm going to grant an 11-meter variance for the person here, but we can't entertain an 11.75-meter variance for the guy that's in a pit down below him. So I think I know it's Mr. Alexander's job to throw mud on the wall and see what sticks, but I'd ask you to take a look at this from kind of an educated perspective. There's nothing in here that can be solved with further communication. We've communicated as best we can. Mr. Mullner's done everything he can. There is no other. You have to make a decision. So instead of deferring and holding this individual up even more, I kindly ask that you'd give strong consideration to my client's application here this evening.
All right, Mr. Preston, thank you. I think we get the.
Okay, thank you very much.
The point. Thank you. So I'm gonna bring it back to council. I'm not seeing any other hands. I do have a motion that's been moved and seconded. Councillor Baxter wishes to speak again. So again, I need to go through these steps. Is there anyone who opposes Councillor Baxter speaking for a third time? Seeing none, Councillor Baxter, go ahead.
Yeah, I just think that what Mr. Preston said requires an answer, which is that if we are doing something here that is legally challengeable, even if it later fails, then it's going to end up in court and the whole process is going to go on even longer. It seems wiser to me, given the information we have, to ask for a legal opinion, make sure we do this properly, and thus shorten the whole process. Thank you.
Thank you. I'm not seeing any other hands. So I'm going to call the question on the motion. Those in opposition? Councillor Day and Baxter oppose. The motion carries. Moving on to 9.5, Councillor Parkinson, can you return, please? Councillor Parkinson? There you
I'm back. Good to
thank
see the
you.
mayor.
I will go to 9.5. This is our Ms. Clark, our Manager of Development Services, regarding the Royal Beach Development Agreement.
Thank you very much, Mayor Martin. I will step in for Ms. Clark, and I look slightly different, but Carrie is on the phone as well to help backfill a little bit of information. The reason that I'm speaking on behalf of Carrie is to represent a couple of changes from the agenda that Council's seeing tonight. With the agenda tonight, there was a brief description that was on a table at the end of the staff report. I just want to speak to a specific section of that table where staff has amended what you're seeing in front of you tonight. So the table, which is on page 307 of 451, and it is the second row. It speaks about sections 2 to 6. The fifth bullet down, it says the conditions of parkland subdivision, including allowance for base density of 250 residential units and 3,716 meters square of non-res, has been removed from the development agreement. That is because that exact wording and phrase essentially is included in the zone. Because it's there, that's the strongest document that we can bring, and so that portion is removed from the development agreement. Parkland provisions have remained to tie it in. So I'm very, very pleased to be tabling the development agreement for council's consideration and review. If council has got any questions, we have the Seacliff team on the line tonight, as well as Ms. Clark and myself and Mr. Earl available to answer a question. We're more than pleased that Seacliff has also prepared a briefing, which I understand that council's a receipt of, and the application's here to walk you through it. So without further ado, I'd like to introduce Georgia from Seacliff, or Niall Atil from Seacliff, to work their way through the briefing as provided by Seacliff.
Perfect. Thank you so much, Brent. Good evening, Mayor and Council. It's Georgia Desjardins here with Seacliff Properties, representing the owner of Royal Beach. As Brent said, we're very pleased to present this development agreement for your information this evening. I just wanted to touch base, as since being provided last week, and as is standard with these types of processes, a few final aspects for clarification were identified, which we have worked with the city to incorporate into a final version of the development agreement, which is ready for signature and registration this week. I'm just going to briefly touch on a couple of those items, which, as Brent mentioned, were also confirmed in a corresponding memo provided previously. To confirm, as the public hearing is now closed, and as such, no new information is being provided here. This is merely a clarification on a few items that have previously been presented and or discussed with council as it relates to our application, and that have since been incorporated into the development agreement. So item 1 that I'll touch on is Schedule C, the park's terms of reference. The identical copy of the park's terms of reference that was reviewed and supported by council in the October 2020 committee meeting is appended to the final version. This terms of reference addresses, among many other things, 2 trail specifications in particular, including the requirement for a 4-meter wide waterfront trail, along with the connection of the Royal Beach Trail with the City of Colwood Waterfront Trail to the north of the property. Secondly, as it relates to building requirements, the language has been revised to ensure that at minimum of step 3 of the energy step code, or the level adopted by council at the time of building permit application is made, whichever is the most restrictive, be achieved. And finally, as it relates to storm sewer, the creation of a master storm water management plan was always intended, and as such, the language of section 22 has been updated to confirm this intent and requirement. We've spent months working closely with city staff to develop and finalize this agreement, and both our team and the city are confident that this agreement reflects the will of council and provides the appropriate framework to enable this project to move forward. In the event that there are any further questions, myself and colleagues Jim Hartshorn and Niall Paltiel from our team at KeyCorp are available to answer. Otherwise, again, we look forward to moving forward and executing the development agreement and submitting for registration later this week. Thank you.
Thank you. Councillor Day. Councillor Day.
Hi, sorry about that. Had to rescue a dog. I'm back. I just wanted to clarify, I didn't understand what Mr. Molnar was saying. Is that all of this bullet 2, or only the bullet that speaks to the conditions of parkland subdivision.
Thank you very much, Councillor Day. Through the chair to Councillor Day, it was only the fifth bullet. It starts with the word conditions of parkland subdivision, including the base density of 250. It's only that clause which is embedded in the zone. The rest of the document remains as written.
Thank you.
The next speaker will be Councillor Parkinson.
Thank you, Your Worship. Exciting to get to this point. I think the clarifications that we've received on the development agreement are productive. I know there was concern about bringing the development agreement back to council. I think it shows on a major project like this that it was probably a worthwhile thing. And my recollection of the main reasons for bringing it back to council were, firstly, we wanted to ensure that the sediments on the water side of the seismic setback lands were fully understood and dealt with before any development at all occurred on Area 3. And I believe I'm told that's what the language in here confirms and reinforces. And you know, I must confess it's somewhat confusing to me. I read it, but I'm prepared to accept that. You know, and I know we have staff and the developer on the line here. So if anybody with more knowledge than me doubts that from either of those groups, speak now, or I guess forever hold your silence. And then the other reason that we were quite concerned and wanted to make sure it came back was the Waterfront Trail, which you know, I would say the trail from the I call it from the pub to the duplexes, the 4 meter wide hard surfaced. And again, I think that's been committed to as well. So I'm happy to see where we're at now, and I look forward to things coming to fruition there. Thank you, Your Worship.
Thank you. Councillor Baxter.
Yeah, I'm not aware that anybody's committed to paying for the trail that Councillor Parkinson talked about. Am I wrong on that, staff?
Sorry, it just takes me a minute to gear up. It is included to be part of the parkland improvements that'll be coming to council within the next 12 months after consideration and then implemented. Be coming to council after 12 months and before 18 of the development agreement from the date of signing. It is fully expected that the developer will be paying for that improvement, and the developer's online and can further clarify if they wish.
I can confirm that as well. Thank you.
So if I can further question Mr. Molnar, is it true then that the fact that council has to approve the parks plan gives us complete carte blanche to refuse it if we don't think any condition has been fulfilled?
You can, through the chair to Councillor Baxter, the fact that council has to resolve or is required to consider that park plan, including the standard of maintenance associated with that park plan, means that council can ask for repeats and recycles on that as far as they need to bring clarity about the timing, objectives, and degree of improvement that best satisfies them. If you are asking about the ability to disable the zone from that parks plan, the parks plan is a component of the development agreement obligations for the developer to provide within reasonable time frame. It's that certainty that we hope the council will get from the development agreement as considered as it moves forward. So council will have the ability to reject or accept that park plan as a component of the development, and then continue to work with the developer to refine that parks plan.
Okay, just one further small point of clarity on that. So there is no set time frame for completing all of the development agreement, I get from what you said, but of course, staff would hold back approvals or or monies to complete any commitments that weren't completed if the development, if the building of the development was nearing completion. Is that right?
That's correct. That statement about 250 single-family units and 3715 square meters commercial is intended to be applied before those park plan provisions come into place, as the developer's working on their parks master plan, and then post that exactly, Councillor Baxter, we would be able to say, I'm sorry, until the parks plan, you'll need to meet the parks plan, and council will need to review and consider it and approve it.
Okay, then that simplifies the rest of what I have to say. So I can't find any mention of parking in this document except for the potential for ferry parking. But unless you tell me otherwise, Mr. Mulder, I'm going to assume that staff will ensure that there is the necessary parking associated with each park as normally happens. A lot of the parks are nowhere near a place where they could provide parking, but some of them are. So given your silence on that, I'll assume that will happen.
That's correct.
And I don't have to talk about that because I got the right answer there. The other thing is October 19th, 2020, I asked about controls on the appearance of pump stations, and you referred me to the development agreement. That is not specifically in the development agreement, as far as I can see, nor would it be covered by the parks terms of reference. So can you tell me how we will get beautiful looking pump stations?
You are correct. It is not in the development agreement. It is in part of the sanitary master plans, I would expect. And utility buildings of that nature don't necessarily require a development permit. However, if council was concerned about the form and character of that building, we could certainly state that that pump station shall be subject to development permit layer or be considered by council. And that would not be considered new information relevant to tonight because we know that a pump station is coming forward.
Okay, well, I think that without some means of requiring that, then this developer or some future developer that might take over could chintz on the appearance, for financial reasons or whatever. So I think we do need that. So can I leave that with you? Thank you. And that is me done. Oh, no, wait a minute. One more thing. We also had a conversation during one of these meetings about bike troughs on stairs. And you actually advised me that that could be taken care of if there was a council resolution. Therefore, and I apparently didn't follow up on that, so I'm going to try and follow up on that now. And council may vote with me or not, but at least it'll be dealt with. So I'm proposing that any set of stairs in the development that connects to a road or a path intended for bicycles, even if only at one end, shall include a bike trough. If anybody doesn't know what a bike trough is, it's just a shallow trough beside the stairs, which makes it easier for the person owning the bike to get it upstairs. You don't have to pick up the bike and run up the stairs. You just push it upstairs. Thank you. That's a motion.
Okay, thank you. Do I have a seconder to that motion? Councillor Day has seconded it. Thank you. Discussion? Is there any? Councillor Baxter has already spoken to it. So Councillor Day, did you wish to speak to it?
No, I'm good.
The motion? Okay, Councillor Jansen, did you wish to speak to the motion?
I'm just trying to envision the trough in concert with a railing. How does all that work? I'm assuming the code requires railings. Maybe someone can spell that out for me.
Go ahead, Councillor Baxter.
Yeah, so you can see these, I know in Victoria, you can probably see them lots of other places. The trough is usually right beside the railing on the inside of the railing, so that people walking on the stairs don't step in the trough, because it only has to be wide enough for bike wheels. And the railing doesn't get in the way that way. Thank you.
Great. I'm not seeing any other hands, so I'm going to call the question on that specific motion. Those in opposition, please raise your hand. Nobody opposes, so that motion passes. And then I go back to just general comments, and that was Councillor Jansen. Councillor Jansen, you had your hand up.
Yeah, thank you, Worship. I've read through this, and it just satisfies some far more talented persons on council than myself, and far be it for me to criticize that. I do look for one thing specifically, being our representative to Crest. You know, it doesn't specify. We have encountered at Crest where there's some buildings that require repeaters, and it comes in after the fact. And I would like some consideration or some comment from Brent or even the proponent that if an antenna is required as a repeater for public safety in that portion, because it is fairly low to the ground, and oftentimes we know you get close to the water's edge and your phone all of a sudden is pinging off of the US, and reception can be an issue. I know we won't know until they build the buildings, but I'd hate to think that the community or Crest, ergo our community, is on the hook down the road. If we can get some clarity on that from the proponent or from Brent, that would be great.
Repeaters are not my specialty, Councillor Jensen, through the chair. So Georgia, Niall, do you want to speak to Councillor Jensen's request?
Can you hear me?
Yeah, we can now.
Hi there. This is Niall with Key Corp on behalf of the Royal Beach Development. Typically, the mechanical room alterations and antenna areas necessary to provide repeaters in buildings do not take up a substantial area, but as Councillor Jensen has raised, it is advantageous to plan ahead when that comes. And so my anticipation and understanding in this case would be, at this point, Crest has not reached out with any long-term planning needs for this particular site. That being said, throughout this extensive DP process, we would be available for discussions as the development proceeds.
Great. I have two staff members who are wishing to comment on this. It's our fire chief and our Mr. Earl. I will leave it. Go ahead, guys. Whoever wishes to speak to it.
Thank you, Your Worship. In the agreement, section 29, subsection C, install where deemed necessary by the city, acting reasonable conduit to allow for emergency repeater systems to be installed within buildings on the lands.
Great. Excellent. Thank you.
Yeah, thanks.
And we see
Robert,
that Councillor Day found that too.
It was on the. It was covered up on my hand while I was holding it. That's funny. I made it as far as 27. I appreciate that. And if we can get some clarity as well from Niall or Georgia, at what point in the development process will we undertake to build the multi-purpose pathway for the community to enjoy?
Hello, Mr. Chair. Can you hear me?
Yes.
Hi, this is Niall again. So there's two answers to that. There's the short-term answer, which is the multi-purpose pathway that we intend to build as a initial project right from the get-go that will connect people directly from Metchosin Road down to the water. We thought that this would be an important initial path, because as Latoria Road down to the water gets developed as part of the earlier phases of the project, we still want to provide that pedestrian, at the very minimum, a pedestrian connectivity in the short term. In the longer term, the multi-purpose pathway will be provided as is committed to in the parts terms of reference. That we understand that this is a significant priority of council, and the parts plan, which will come back to council within 12 to 18 months, will reflect the significance of this priority as you'll see it within the timing of the phasing of the agreement.
Thanks, Niall, and thank you, Mr. Mayor.
Thank you, Councillor Day.
Thank you. Sorry, I got distracted and forgot to ask about, because it is in both the report and the chart, about the 250 residential units and however many, 3,700 square meters of non-residential is allowed before the park improvements are constructed. So I'm just trying to understand how that works. I don't know if staff would like to tackle that or the developer could tackle it. How do we have 250 units before we have any of the other amenities?
Through the chair to Councillor Day. If we can recall in previous discussions with the developer, as they presented their cases coming forward, they spoke about the necessity of improvements, timing, built form, and commercial opportunities as being in step with each other. As there's a timing offset to allow the developer, staff, and council to work through the park's terms of reference, this is intended to allow a portion of growth as it doesn't negate the aspect of park as being considered in the zone. And so we've worked with the developer to embed those requirements in the development agreement and then call about the timing as council considers those park improvements. Mrs. Desjardins, as well as Mr. Paltil, will be able to offer additional comment as necessary.
Thank you.
Yeah, just to add to that, this was added as part of the zoning bylaw that was received by council. I believe in one presentation you may have seen a wise old man demonstrating that you walk like a duck when you insert both commercial and residential development within a project. In this case, I think what it really comes down to is there's a substantial amount of infrastructure that needs to be placed within the project. Civil infrastructure that is prior to any significant doors or commercial being added, and included in that, as mentioned previously, will be the multi-use path that takes people down to the waterfront. So be assured it doesn't mean that there will be it doesn't mean nothing is happening as far as dedication goes. It just ensures that there are initial projects that can be made underway in advance of the fulsome parks plan, which will be realized throughout later on in the development process.
Great, thank you. And if I could just ask one last question for Mr. Molnar, it's in regards to the sanitary sewer on page 308, looking at the second bullet item, the second row, I guess. The third bullet, the developer will monitor flows. The city will be responsible for any upgrades when maximum metered flow is exceeded. When we're talking about maximum metered flow, that's for the full build out number of units?
Through the mayor to Councillor Day. No, the flow allocation that was, sorry, I didn't mean to sound so blunt there. The flow allocation that was considered for the Royal Bay lands was an allocation based upon the unit entitlement of the time. So that has been allocated between the North lands, that are owned by Gablecraft, the South lands that are owned by Gablecraft, and the Seacliff lands that are owned by Seacliff, the beach lands. That flow has been pre-purchased and systems built around that flow. It's that flow that's been allocated to the system. After that flow has been reached through monitoring, and the developer will be monitoring as well as the sitter monitoring those flows, the developer will pay the traditional enhancement charge that is paid by all developments that haven't pre-bought their enhancement. That enhancement charge will be applied to infrastructure upgrades, not pump station builds, but existing pump station upgrades or pipe upgrades as necessitated for the flow. It's the same requirement that we put in Gablecraft's south consideration, but with a different flow allocation as allocated between the lands. Hope that makes sense.
Okay. The only part that I'm having trouble understanding is the
Oh, I see. They pay the fee into the system and then the city does the upgrades. Okay, I think I follow you now. And there were some considerations. I couldn't put my hand on the report, but about future needs for the system, given that all of the areas are now developing at greater densities than were originally envisioned. When will we get our next update on how we're going to address any shortfalls in our system?
Oh, Mr. Molnar, you're muted.
Okay, haven't done that very often. Thank you very much, Mayor Martin. Through the mayor then to Councillor Day. So the city, outside of the Royal Bay considerations for the Southlands or the Royal Beach considerations for the Southland, has committed to council to bring back a master planning exercise for our capacity and considerations for sewer, in which case council has also asked that we consider soil types and flow as it considers into the system, as well as inflow and investigation. So that sounds like a big list, but we're starting them out with inflow and investigation, which will be wrapped up at the end of Q1, the end of our rainy season. We're tying that into a master plan update that'll marry into the soil typologies. And about Q3 of this year, we'll be able to start advising about the capacity requirements. From the initial considerations at hand, the CRD's consideration of our capacity requirements, as well as the city's consideration of its capacity requirements, all coalesce at 2043, which is the capacity update for the McLaughlin Point treatment plant. So at the same time that we are running into that threshold, CRD is as well going to be running into that threshold. So we hope to bring that more to light with our sanitary exercise around Q3 this year, if all goes well. Thank you.
Thank you.
Great.
That's it.
Thank you. Excellent. I'd like to thank staff and the proponent for all the work that they've done. And it's exciting to see this process continue to move forward. So you're very excited about that. We are now going to move on to 9.6, which is Ms. Hempting, our Director of Finance, regarding our 2021 off-cycle grant and aid applications. Ms. Hempting.
Thank you, Mayor Martin. I have prepared a brief document that summarizes what staff are seeking tonight. So we have received 2 off-cycle grant and aid applications. We refer to any grant and aid application that isn't received by the annual deadline as off-cycle. Under policy, we will either bring those forward if there is remaining grant funding in the year in which they are received, or we will work with the applicant to bring them forward in the subsequent year. So as you can see on the document before you, we have $2,200 remaining in our grant and aid budget, and we are seeking direction on whether or not council wishes to support either of these applications. And if so, we are seeking council to direct the amount of financial support you wish to provide to either of the applicants. Please to provide any further information if you so wish. Thank you.
Great, thank you. I will go to Councillor Baxter first. Councillor Baxter.
Right, so I have been supportive of arts groups, I think consistently in Colwood and in the West Shore. However, at the March 29th meeting, the president of Colwood Arts and Culture spoke to us and called into question the credibility of the West Shore Arts Council and other groups in the West Shore. And I was a bit shocked by that. So I actually went back and watched the video of the meeting and actually wrote down every word that was said. And it still feels like we're being asked to pick sides in an internecine battle. And the only thing that's dafter than funding one side in such a battle is to fund both sides. So we need local groups to work together, not to fight one another. So I'm proposing a motion that, and I believe staff can put this motion on the screen, that the aid request from the Arts and Culture Colwood Society be refused for 2021, and that all arts groups be asked to work together to make one combined submission of their individual requests in 2022.
Okay, I am just sorry. I have to just make notes of people who, just so that people don't lose their line. So just give me one moment, and then I'll look for a seconder. Okay, D, J. Okay, I'm going to clear hands. Do I have a seconder, please? If somebody could raise their hand if they're willing to second that motion. Councillor Jansen has seconded it. So, Councillor Baxter, do you wish to speak to this motion specifically at all? Anymore?
No.
Okay, thank you. I believe it was Councillor Jansen who was seconded it. Councillor Jansen, did you have any comments?
Thank you, Your Worship. I just would like to add up the time we've spent considering arts proposals and submissions this year. I think it's significant, and I love this idea. Thank you.
Okay, I'm not seeing any other hand. Oh, I do see a hand. Councillor Kobayashi. And then Day.
Thank you, Your Worship. I will not support this motion. I think we actually had the West Shore Arts and Culture come in and do a presentation. I see different functions right now, Councillor Baxter. I see them have different functions, but it's always been a complaint, I think from day one from this entire council, that we never did understand any of this right now. You know, there's requests from everybody, including the CRD. We've always had issues with this, but I think that I personally would support the Colwood Society, mainly because I see the deliverables. You know, I clearly see deliverables, whereas with the West Shore, which I was not supportive of anyways, but the West Shore Arts Council, I didn't see hardcore deliverables. Deliverables to our citizens, it's their tax dollars. This is discretionary funding. So also, I was going to make a counter motion to this. I was going to support the one of the motions, the recommendation that entire $2,200 go to the Arts and Cultural Colwood Society. So I will not support this, mainly because, you know, we're punishing one group and the other group is getting funding right now. And so I don't see this. When I see clear deliverables and what they're going to deliver for our citizens, I will support that. And even if it's with my own dollars, my personal dollars, I will support it. In fact, I was going to say I would top it. But so I am not going to support this motion. Thank you very much, Mayor.
Thank you. Councillor Day.
Thank you. I think it's important not to make things more divisive. It's easy to disagree. And I unfortunately, and I have great respect for all of the other members of council and their different points of view. And I generally really appreciate, especially those who are willing to look at how do we learn more about, you know, we're not all experts at everything, and we all have to learn. But I think when our residents come forward with an initiative with clear deliverables, they deserve to be supported, even if those agencies sometimes disagree with one another on what should come first or how things are done. We have to be, I think, a little above that. I think that I do have concerns that arts can be a little fuzzy to support, but hopefully warm and fuzzy and working together to something good. I think that the Arts and Culture Society in Colwood is alive and well, and I'm hoping that everyone can feel supported and we could get on with making the life a little easier for everyone who's struggling to be artistic in a pandemic. So thank you. That's my thoughts.
Okay, excellent. I'm not seeing any other hands. I will speak to the motion, just so that I'm pointing it out. I'm very supportive of the Colwood Arts, and I think they do need some support. But what I do like about this motion is that this motion is forward thinking, and it's about us addressing this problem for next year. Because if we don't address it now, we're going to have to address it next year, because West Shore and the Colwood group are going to be coming to us next year as well. And I'm not sure how, unless we give them direction that they need to help this council make a decision on who and where and what and how are we supporting and what is the best arts way to facilitate arts within our community, we're going to struggle. And I would rather us invest the dollars significantly in one place than spread it around and not have as much bang for our buck. So I will be supporting the motion this evening. Councillor Kobayashi. Yeah. Go ahead,
thank you very much, Your Worship. I just want to point out to the rest of the council, just remind you that 100% of the dollars that go into the arts and culture Colwood Society, what I just heard tonight, 100% of the money will go directly into programming initiatives. And that cannot be said about our other dollars that we've spread out throughout the city. And that goes to overhead, a certain percentage, up to 23%. So I just wanted to point this out. Thank you, Mayor.
Thank you. And I think that, Councillor Kobayashi, I think that's a good point. I'm not seeing any other hands, so I'm going to call the question. Those in opposition to this motion, please raise your hand. Councillor Kobayashi, Councillor Day, Councillor Logan, Councillor Jensen oppose. So the motion fails. So I will look for, so if we could take down that motion, please. And I will look for someone to move a different motion. Councillor Kobayashi, go ahead.
Thank you, Mayor Martin. I would like to propose that the off-cycle 2021 grant and aid of $2,200 be granted to the Arts and Culture Colwood Society.
Thank you. Councillor Day, your hand is up. Are you seconding that or are you wishing to speak?
I'm happy to second that.
Okay, great. Thank you. Councillor Kobayashi, do you wish to make any other comments?
No, I think I've said my piece, Mayor.
I just wanted to give you that chance. Councillor Day, did you wish to comment?
All that I'll say is that what I'm chiefly looking at is making things available to the residents of Colwood to do something right now this year. That's it. Thank you.
Thank you. Councillor Baxter.
I understand where the other councillors are coming from, but I think that the description of arts organizations having different opinions is not exactly what happened. What I will say again, that what happened was, unlike anything I can recall seeing before in my 4 decades working at in local government, we had one organization come forward and call into question the credibility of other sister or brother organizations. And calling credibility into question is a serious issue. And had the applicant given a positive speech about what they were going to do for the city, I would probably be on that side. But attacking other groups is exactly what should not happen. Thank you.
Thank you. I'm not seeing any other hands, so I am going to call the question for this motion that is on screen. So those in opposition to the recommendation, please raise your hand. And
point of order. Sorry.
Certainly, go ahead.
I apologize. I didn't notice earlier that we had left the or less in, and I don't think staff is going to find that very workable.
Yeah.
And
I don't think. Yeah, thank you. No, that's a good catch, Councillor Day. I don't think that was actually in the motion from Councillor Kobayashi either. So staff, can you please delete or less? Thank you. That was a good catch. So I'm going to go back and call the question one more time. Those in opposition to the motion, Councillor Baxter opposes. Moving on to 9.7. This is
point of order.
Certainly.
Point of order,
go ahead.
Chair.
Yes, Councillor Baxter.
My hand's up to make a different motion. More or
Well,
less.
you wish to. Well, okay, sure. We can. I moved on because we don't have any more money to spend. But sure, go. I will allow you to make another motion in regards to this.
Yeah. So it's basically just the back half of my previous motion, which the part about next year. Anyway.
Okay, staff, can you please? Can we please go back to Councillor Baxter's previous motion?
So it would read, all arts groups be asked to work together to make one combined submission of their requests in 2022.
Okay, so I'm going to leave that. That's going to be a completely separate motion because I've already passed the first motion. So the motion will just read that all arts groups be asked to work together to make one combined submission in the 2022 budget cycle.
Yeah, that was my intent.
Okay. Do I have I'm going to clear hands. Do I have a seconder? So, sorry, staff, can you please delete that whole first one because that one's already been passed. There you go. Councillor Parkinson, are you seconding that motion?
Yes, I am, Your Worship.
Excellent, thank you. Councillor Baxter, did you wish to do any more motivation on this?
I don't think it's necessary.
Thank you. Councillor Parkinson, do you wish to speak to it?
Just that that this is, I think, very worthwhile, but I'm not sure that the arts groups, you know, are going to be able to do it. I'm not. At some point, I think, as a city, perhaps we're going to have to put some staff time to look at all the potential arts groups and see what strategy we want to take with helping them out. But this is a good start, so I'm happy with it.
Okay, I'm not seeing any other hands, so I'm going to call the question. Those in opposition? Councillor Day opposes. I'm going to move on now. Just pausing, making sure. Okay, it looks like I can. 9.7. This is the financial plan bylaw introduction. Ms. Hempting.
Thank you, Mayor Martin. So you have before you tonight the city's 5-year financial plan bylaw for 2021 through 2025. So this bylaw is the result of the work that we have been doing for months now. Specifically, Council met as committee for a series of meetings that represented our budget deliberations. Committee proposed a number of changes which Council resolved at the most recent meeting of April 12th. I've prepared a brief report before you that highlights the changes that have been reflected in the financial plan bylaw. And I just wanted to take a brief moment and highlight two factors of this report. So one, we have walked through at length what is driving the property tax increase for 2021. Moving into future years, we have highlighted in this report what this, the impact of this financial plan is on subsequent years. So you'll notice in year 2 that there is a tax increase proposed of 6.25% in year 2. This is primarily the result of a number of service increases that are either phased over years or as the result of direction received to defer a service increase to recent years. I wanted to highlight this. Council will have the opportunity, of course, to review these service, both changes and existing service levels annually. So I say that because typically what you see in year 2, year 3, year 4, that's absolutely subject to change as we return to budget deliberations, and in particular, our second service review this fall. In addition, I've also prepared a discussion on the commercial or the business tax rate. So as you know, Council endorsed a tax policy this past fall. And one of the tactics to support business development, economic activity within the city of Colwood is that of reducing our business multiplier. As you know, that's the amount of times our business taxes are higher than our residential taxes. Council has directed a target multiplier of 3.67, and we're looking at a 5-year time frame to achieve that. 2020 marked year 1. And last year, Council adopted a tax rate bylaw that saw us reduce our business multiplier from approximately 4.5 times our residential rate to 3.93 times our residential rate. What I have prepared tonight proposes that we maintain that business multiplier. If we assume an evenly distributed move over a 5-year period, 3.93 times is more than sufficient to see us maintain that target within the next 5 years. And so tonight, we do have the bylaw before you. We are seeking adoption of that bylaw, and we will then return to the next council meeting with our tax rate bylaw. And we are seeking direction on the business ratio tonight. And so we can incorporate that direction from council when we return with the bylaw. I'll leave my comments at that for now, and I'll be pleased to answer any questions. Thank you.
Councillor Day.
Thank you. I'm just curious if it changed or maybe you just misspoke, because in your report, the business tax rate multiplier is 3.67. I'm looking at the top of page 4 of 5 of your report.
Thank you, through the chair. Thank you, Councillor Day. So to clarify the first statement on page 4 of 5, we are looking to reduce the business tax rate multiplier to 3.67 over a 5-year period.
Okay.
Thank you. So we are proposing that we maintain last year's multiplier of 3.93, and then we'll continue that reduction in coming years.
I see. Thank you. Also, and this is not a criticism, it's just an observation. Right below the targets in the box, the paragraph beginning with Colwood's business tax rate multiplier, the last line talks about class 6 moving to class 1. And those class numbers, even though I've been on council for a long time, they don't stick in my head. They don't really mean anything to me. So I was just going to suggest that we should give them a descriptor because other people community members who try to read our reports probably have the same problems I do. And also on the previous page, on page 3 of 5, in red, you put our property tax increases for the next 5 years with an asterisk, noting that we are excluding the impact of estimated new construction taxation. And I just wanted to be clear that our budget this year does include our new taxation, so that our resulting increase in our assessed value overall is still being taken into account.
Thank you through the chair. I appreciate that feedback. And just to comment on the property tax increase that is highlighted in red there, I wanted to include that that note that it excludes the impact. The reason I highlighted that is some municipalities, when they refer to their tax increase, they will include the impact. So you may hear municipalities say, our tax increase was 7%. This included new construction of 2%. Throughout our process, and in recent history here at Colwood, when we speak about our property tax increase, we're talking about the increase and the impact over the previous budget. And under policy, we exclude from that discussion the impact of the new construction. But Councillor Day, you're absolutely right. That new construction is, of course, included into our financial plan and our budget. And as we highlighted in this report, in 2021, that is primarily providing the funding for the increased fire protection and policing services for the city. Thank you.
Perfect. Thank you so much.
Councillor Baxter.
Sorry, I was going to move the recommendation.
Okay, thank you. Do I have a seconder to that? I will go Councillor Logan. Thank you. Do you wish to comment on that at all?
I have no need to comment on it. Thank you.
Okay, great. I will go to Councillor Parkinson then. Councillor Parkinson.
Thank you, Your Worship. I would remind council that we still have to deal in the financial plan with the impact of our decision to start building sidewalks in the community. And I think that's recognized that will require an adjustment sometime this year. Also, I got to admit, I understood the budget increase this year. I voted for it. I voted for it based on the service review and all the issues that were brought up and that I felt were good for our community. But I can't help but start looking at some of the numbers going forward and saying, well, at some point there's going to need to be some tough love here. And so when we do the service review this year, I think we should be looking for all the departments to come forward to say, what does their service look like at a decreased budget of 10% and sort of go from there. I sure we won't decrease many budgets, but we always have to be looking for efficiencies and wondering what it would mean if there was a little bit less money, so we don't just automatically roll over with these kind of increases. And then just a couple of questions, Jen, if I could. Obviously, the tax bill that you get and I get and Rob gets and everybody gets is the municipal taxes, plus we get a lot for the school district and CRD and what have you. So do we have any idea what their increases look like? Like if they were to average, say 3%, then the total increase for our tax bill would be less. Do we have can we offer any guidance on that?
Absolutely. So we have received both requisition information from the CRD and the hospital district, as well as rates from those jurisdictions that set their own rates. When we speak about a typical residential property in Colwood, that typical property under our proposed increase here would be paying an additional $200 over last year. That's for gross taxation. So the combined impact for both the city's levy as well as those on behalf of the other jurisdictions results in approximate $200 increase, or overall a 6% increase. So we saw some jurisdictions had a 0% increase. The city, we are looking at the 6.5% increase. And overall, the combined impact is $200.
But you say that's 6%?
Yes, overall.
So it would seem like some of the other agencies are increasing probably even, but if you say some are at zero, no increase, then they would be in excess of 6.5%, some of the other.
That's correct. So for residential taxes, we're seeing no increase for the school, the provincial school taxes, no increase for transit, no increase for the assessment authority.
So where's the increases come from?
So we've got the city's increase, which is the primary driver. And we also are seeing an increase with both the CRD taxes and the hospital taxes.
So I guess I believe that the municipal share of the tax bill is about 50%. Am I way off on that number?
Approximately, correct.
Okay. So if half of the budget goes up 6.5% and the other half goes up with a number of people saying it's minor increase or little increase, somewhere there's enough increase to make it an overall 6%. Like the other half is averaging 5.5%. Is that not correct?
Overall, the impact of the municipal increase, so that's both the impact of our property tax increase and the impact of maintaining a business multiplier of 3.93, is $160 to a typical property. That's just for the net municipal taxes. $5 for West Shore Parks and Recreation, $4 for the library. So that brings us to the $170 figure that's referenced in the report. We're then looking at approximately $20 on the typical property for the CRD and another $11 for the hospital taxes. And we're not realizing any increase for the provincial school, the transit, and assessment. So the combined impact there is an approximate $200 increase, which when we compare typical residential property this year to a typical residential property last year, approximates that 6% increase.
No,
so
Jen, if our increase is 6.5% and that's $170.
I will jump in right there. Our revenue,
Please.
Property tax revenue, so from the financial plan perspective, which is a figure that is referred to throughout the budget process, that revenue increase was 6.5%. Then we look at the impact on a typical single family residential property. When we start to manipulate multipliers, we are shifting burden between property taxes, and that impacts the increase. So the municipal increase is actually approximately 10%, or $160. It's not the 6.5%. And the reason for that is because we are looking to shift our business class multiplier. And another factor we have to consider in that equation is how our assessment base, the composition of our assessment base. And so the composition of our assessment base this year versus last year, our commercial or business assessment has dropped ever so slightly. So it makes a slightly smaller. Last year we were at 93, just shy of 93.5% of our assessment base was residential taxes. This year, we're closer to 94%. So what does that mean? You know, it means as our assessment base is growing, right now, our residential assessment is growing at a greater rate than our business is. And so that has implications. And so you're absolutely right. When we talk about that 6.5%, that doesn't make sense, but it's because when we actualize that to how our assessment and the composition of our assessment base has changed, and the fact that we are preparing this information under the direction that we're looking to achieve a specific business class multiplier, which requires us to shift some of the burden. Our residential properties are paying overall closer to 10% more in municipal taxes. And then that doesn't actualize to 10%, it comes in closer to 6% because a number of jurisdictions this year have not increased either their rates or their requisition.
I'd like to tell you that I absorbed all that. One thing I know for sure, Jen, is you're twice as smart as I am. But I'm going to have to come in and work through the numbers with you. I'm sorry. I don't follow it. I don't understand it. And so I'll come in and we can walk through them together at some point. And just to make life more complicated for you, and I'm sorry to have to ask this question, but I do because it's in front of me. So shall we say we over deducted business taxes last year? We went, we thought we were going to hit 4.34 and instead it came into 3.93.
The quick answer is if we assumed we wanted to take an even approach, which doesn't necessarily mean that the impact would be even every year. But if we wanted to take that multiplier of 4.51 and hit 3.67 over 5 years, yes, you're absolutely right. We overshot it. I will add a little context. When we started those discussions, which was about this time last year, the timeline was initially discussed between 2 and 5 years. And so there may have been some consideration that we were trying to achieve a quicker timeline than we ultimately adopted under the policy last fall. But simply put, yes, last year we shifted burden that resulted in a business multiplier of 3.93, which got us further along a 5-year time frame in year 1.
So what would the impact be if we said overshot last year, let's get back on target and make the business multiplier 4.17 this year instead of 3.93?
I can take a minute and have a look at this spreadsheet. The impact on our business property taxes would be that they would increase this year. The reason staff have not recommended that is primarily because it kind of somewhat flies in the face of our efforts to reduce the business multiplier. We would be increasing commercial taxes this year over what was levied last year. And yeah, it may be helpful. Again, tonight is not the introduction of the tax rate bylaw. That said, we are seeking direction on the multiplier, and I can certainly provide some scenarios for council's consideration if you wish when the tax rate bylaw is introduced at the next council meeting.
Okay. Well, as I said, I'll come in and we can chat and you can smarten me up. Thank you. Thank you, Worship. Sorry, I see the glazed looks on everybody's face out there. I apologize once again, but that's who I am. Thank you, Jen, very much.
Councillor Kobayashi.
Thank you very much, Your Worship. Jen, I actually understood everything you said, so that was the scary part. And Councillor Parkinson, remember the coffee over at Sequoia? What was my estimate? $200. There you go. I win. You owe me a coffee now. Thanks very much. No, I did understand it, Jen. Thank you.
Happy to buy you that coffee, Doug.
Councillor Baxter.
I just want to say that I like Jen Hepting's logic there, that we don't want to put the commercial taxes back up because it sends the exact opposite of the message that we're trying to send. And therefore, I, for one, have no need to see any options along those lines and don't require any more work done. I'm hoping Councillor Parkinson will send a similar message.
Okay, thank you. I'm sorry, I got distracted, so I do not remember if I had a mover and seconder to the motion. Do I have anything on the floor right now, staff?
Yes, you do. You have the motion that was before you.
Oh, I do have the motion. Oh yeah, it was Councillor Baxter, that's right. All right, yes. So we do have the motion in front of us. It is what's in the agenda. If if anybody's wondering. Is there any other discussion before I call the question? Seeing none, I will call the question. Those in opposition, please raise your hand. Councillor Kobayashi opposes. That takes us to bylaws. If we can get through this quickly, council, it would be helpful if people were like moving and seconding when I requested. So the first is 10.1. This is bylaw number 1872. This is the 5-year financial plan. We are going to do first, second, and third, and then we will do a second motion for the adoption. So mover and seconder on the first, second, and third, Councillor Logan, then Jansen. I'll clear that. I will call the question. Those in opposition? Nobody opposes. Thank you. Going back to the same bylaw, number 1872, 5-year financial plan. This is for adoption. Moved by Councillor Baxter. Looking for a seconder, please. Second by Councillor Parkinson. Discussion? Seeing none, I'll call the question. Those in opposition? Councillor Kobayashi opposes. Moving on to 10.2, this is bylaw number 1861, land use bylaw amendment, CD zone. This is for third reading. May I get a mover and seconder, please? Moved by Councillor Baxter, second by Councillor Parkinson. Is there any discussion? Seeing none, I'll call the question. Those in opposition? Councillor Day opposes. Moving on to 10.3, bylaw number 1862, main sewer LAS enlargement for 3441 Carger Terrace. This is for adoption. Moved by Councillor Kobayashi, second by Councillor Baxter. Discussion? Seeing none, I'll call the question. Those in opposition? Nobody opposes. 10.4, bylaw number 1863, West Sewer LAS enlargement for the same address. Moved by Councillor Baxter, seconded by Councillor Kobayashi. Discussion? Seeing none, I'll call the question. Those in opposition? Nobody opposes. Moving on to 10.5, bylaw number 1864, main sewer LAS enlargement for 530 Allendale Road for adoption. Moved by Councillor Day, seconded by Councillor Baxter. Discussion? Seeing none, I will call the question. Those in opposition? Nobody opposes. 10.6, bylaw number 1865, West Sewer LAS for the same address for adoption. This is moved by Councillor Baxter, second by Councillor Kobayashi. Discussion? Seeing none, I will call the question. Those in opposition? Nobody opposes. Moving on to 10.7, bylaw number 1866, main sewer LAS for 3337 Machosen Road for adoption. Moved by Councillor Baxter, seconded by Councillor Logan. Discussion? Seeing none, I'll call the question. Those in opposition? Nobody opposes. 10.8, bylaw number 1867, South Sewer LAS enlargement for the same address. Moved by Councillor Baxter, second by Councillor Logan. Discussion? Seeing none, I will call the question. Those in opposition? Nobody opposes. 10.9, bylaw number 1868, main sewer LAS enlargement for 649 Carindale Road. This is for adoption. Moved by Councillor Baxter, seconded by Mayor Martin. Discussion? Seeing none, I will call the question. Those in opposition? Nobody opposes. Motion number, bylaw 10.10, bylaw number 1869, West Sewer LAS for the same address. This is for adoption. Moved by Councillor Logan, seconded by Councillor Jansen. Discussion? Seeing none, I'll call the question. Those in opposition? Nobody opposes. 10.11, I'm getting dizzy here. Bylaw number 1870, main sewer LAS enlargement for 549 Delora. This is for adoption. Moved by Councillor Day, seconded by Councillor Kobayashi. Discussion? Seeing none, I'll call the question. Those in opposition? Nobody opposes. And then finally, our last bylaw tonight, 10.12, bylaw number 1871, West Sewer LAS enlargement for the same address. This is for adoption. Moved by Councillor Day, seconded by Councillor Baxter. Discussion? Seeing none. Those in opposition? Nobody opposes. Looking for a motion to adjourn. Moved by Councillor Logan. Beat Councillor Day tonight. I'll call the question. Those in opposition? Nobody opposes. All right. Good night, everybody.
Good night, all.